Welcome to Sleeping with Science. This is a quiet place, a gentle corner of sound and thought where curiosity can slow down. Here, science isn't loud or hurried. It speaks softly, so your mind can follow its rhythm without strain. If sleep doesn't come right away, that's perfectly all right. Let your thoughts drift as they wish. They'll settle when they are ready. And if this calm space feels like home, you can always like and subscribe, so it will wait for you whenever you need to rest among quiet ideas again. Tonight, we begin with simplicity, a word so small that it almost disappears, yet everything that exists depends on it. Beneath the surface of every storm, every heartbeat, every orbit, there is a quiet rule that makes motion possible. Water always finds the lowest path. Seeds stretch toward light. Planets trace ellipses through darkness with perfect patience. These are not coincidences. They are the universe choosing efficiency. Life itself prefers what works with the least resistance. Science is the long practice of noticing that preference. Each discovery is a simplification, a stripping away of noise until only the essential pattern remains. Newton's falling apple and the moon above it followed the same law. He merely listened closely enough to hear the whisper behind both. Centuries later, other minds found that light, matter, and energy were not rivals but relatives. When knowledge matures, it speaks more briefly. Fewer words, deeper meaning. You can feel this principle inside yourself. When thoughts collide, the mind tightens. When they drift apart, clarity returns. Complexity is heavy. Simplicity breathes. The heart beats because it must, not because it debates. The lungs draw air in, let it go, and repeat the gesture endlessly without complaint. Each system within you understands something the conscious mind forgets, that peace isn't the absence of activity, but the harmony of necessary actions moving together. Nature demonstrates the same grace everywhere you look. The spiral of a shell echoes the spiral of a galaxy. Both follow the same mathematical curve. River deltas and the veins in your hand divide by nearly identical ratios. Snowflakes and crystal lattices obey laws so strict that they can only appear as freedom. Even chaos, when measured carefully, carries rhythm within it. What looks wild is simply too large for us to see repeating all at once. Simplicity is not the opposite of complexity. It is the foundation beneath it, the skeleton that holds the intricate body upright. Without the simple, the complex would collapse. A melody is only beautiful because its notes obey structure. A sentence only moves us because grammar provides a path. Beauty hides in the architecture, not the decoration. The same is true of thought. When you remove what is unnecessary, truth stands in plain view, calm, clear, complete. As you listen, you may notice the body responding. Shoulders sink a little lower. Breathing steadies. The jaw loosens. The rhythm of the voice becomes the rhythm of the heart. What we call understanding feels, in the body, like rest. That's because comprehension and calm share the same root. Both come when tension resolves into balance. So as we begin this journey together, remember that simplicity isn't emptiness. It's the quiet strength that holds everything else in place, the pulse beneath sound, the stillness within motion, the reason behind beauty. When you find it, whether in thought or in sleep, you're not losing the world. You're finally seeing how gently it works. Simplicity has a form, and that form is balance. The human eye recognizes it instantly: a horizon splitting sea and sky, the curve of a moon reflected on water, the symmetry of a leaf. When the world arranges itself in harmony, the mind sighs with relief. There is nothing left to solve. For ancient humans, that sense of order meant safety, stillness in the grass, no motion of a predator. That instinct endures. We rest when patterns feel complete. Modern science calls this comfort cognitive fluency. When information is easy to process, our nervous system eases its vigilance. Heart rate slows, muscles soften, even pupils dilate slightly. A small physical nod of approval. That is why clear design and symmetrical shapes please us. They cost the brain less energy. Simplicity is efficiency, not taste. Beauty is the byproduct of understanding achieved with minimal effort. Stillness, however, is not the absence of motion. It is motion balanced so perfectly that movement disappears into grace. Imagine a spinning top standing upright, or a planet circling its star along the same invisible thread. Nothing is static, everything adjusts, continuously correcting itself toward center. Perfection is impossible, but equilibrium is constant work done quietly and well. The top leans, it rights itself. The heart misses a beat. The next one compensates. The system persists through balance, not stasis. Our bodies live by that same geometry. Every breath is a swing of a pendulum between two equal points. Inhale, exhale, back again. Even standing still is a dance of countless small corrections in muscle and joint. When those movements align, we experience peace. The mind follows suit. Thoughts pass through awareness like waves across a pond, disturbing nothing for long. Artists, architects, and musicians have always trusted this hidden mathematics. A column mirrored in still water, a melody that resolves exactly when expected, a painting composed around a central axis, each satisfies an ancient need. The pleasure comes from recognition, the feeling that the world briefly fits together. Balance outside mirrors balance within. Close your eyes and picture that still pond again. Dawn light rests on the surface. Mist curls at the edges. The air is cool and clean. A pebble falls, sending rings outward, perfect circles fading into silence. In that fading lies the lesson of simplicity. Disturbance answered, energy dispersed, calm restored. Nothing fights, nothing clings. The system resets itself through patience. When life feels tangled, remember this image. Stillness is not something you earn. It is something you uncover. It was there before the noise began. Nature shows the way: rivers smoothing stones, trees adjusting their shape to the wind, even the night sky spinning so slowly we call it still. All things, given time, settle back into balance. As this idea settles in you, notice what changes. The shoulders ease again. Breath deepens. Thought slows. Each inhale is the world arriving. Each exhale is the world letting go. Simplicity is not decoration or luxury. It is the structure that allows peace to exist. The shape of stillness is everywhere, waiting to be seen. Nature, at every scale, is an economist, quiet, tireless, and exact. Nothing within it is wasted, and nothing survives for long that spends more than it earns. Energy is its only currency, and every living system, from the smallest cell to the vast migration of whales, obeys this silent accounting. When we speak of simplicity, we are really speaking of this, the world's patient habit of doing only what works, and nothing more. If you've ever watched a bird in flight, you've seen this principle at work. It does not beat its wings constantly. It glides whenever air supports it, saving strength for the next lift. Schools of fish turn as one body because synchronized movement costs less energy than chaos. Trees stretch their roots only as far as moisture rewards them. Even the pattern of your breathing, deepening when oxygen is low, slowing when it's plenty, follows this invisible rule of least effort. Scientists call it optimization, but to nature it's simply survival through grace. Evolution prunes away extravagance. Every adaptation is a refinement, a saving of motion, a deletion of waste. A cheetah's spine bends like a bow to maximize stride without added muscle. A spider spins a web strong enough to catch prey but light enough not to break in wind. The shapes that result are beautiful because they are necessary form born purely of function. There is no ego in the design, only purpose distilled to its simplest expression. Energy moves through ecosystems the way breath moves through the body, drawn in, transformed, released. Sunlight enters leaves, becomes sugar, travels into fruit, into animal, into us, and eventually returns to air and soil. Every exchange is counted and balanced. Nothing vanishes, it merely changes hands. Even decay, which seems like loss, is investment in the next generation. The fallen tree nourishes fungi. Fungi feed the ground feeds new roots. It is a cycle so efficient that not a single molecule goes unused. In human systems, we often mistake abundance for success. We build bigger machines, wider networks, more of everything. as though more guarantees better. But nature whispers the opposite truth. The best design is the one that disappears into its purpose. The honeycomb, for instance, uses the least wax possible to store the most honey. Mathematicians later proved the bee's instinct correct. The hexagon encloses space more efficiently than any other shape. Long before we could measure efficiency, life had already mastered it. You can see this pattern in the landscape around you. Rivers choose the shortest route to the sea, cutting curves only where rock resists. Lightning forks toward the ground along paths of minimal resistance. Even the brain itself arranges neurons into networks that transmit information with astonishing thrift. The longer the path, the slower the thought. So the mind, like water, erodes its unnecessary bends over time. There is humility in this economy. Nothing in nature hurries, yet nothing lingers beyond its use. Flowers bloom when pollinators are near and fade when they leave. Leaves fall when light grows scarce. These acts are not losses. They are adaptations, the graceful surrender of what no longer serves. That same rhythm exists in us. We rest when we are tired. We eat when hungry. We release when full. Simplicity, biologically speaking, is balance with circumstance. Sometimes, efficiency appears as beauty so pure that it silences us. The nautilus shell, spiraling in perfect proportion, the veins of a leaf dividing light into smaller miracles. The murmuration of starlings painting air with coordinated motion. None of it is planned, yet none of it is random. What we call elegance is nature's way of being correct. The less effort required, the more beauty produced. In that sense, art imitates life not because it copies nature's forms, but because it seeks the same effortless precision. Consider your own breath again. Each inhale draws in energy. Each exhale releases what's no longer needed. The body repeats this exchange thousands of times a day, without instruction. It is your personal economy of motion, always adjusting, always conserving. Sleep itself is part of this system. A nightly audit where energy is restored, waste removed, and clarity renewed. Every cycle, from heartbeat to rainfall, operates on the same principle. Minimal waste, maximum renewal. As you listen, let this truth soften your thoughts. You don't need to strive to belong to the rhythm of the world. You are already part of this elegant economy. Even rest is participation. Every pause, every still moment, every slow breath is nature's arithmetic, bringing you back into balance. The universe does not reward constant effort, it rewards alignment. Simplicity is not retreat. It is cooperation with everything that quietly keeps you alive. And so, as we move deeper into this night, you might feel gratitude for that hidden order, the invisible balance sheet where every motion is recorded and returned. The more you notice it, the more peaceful the world becomes. Because when you see how effortlessly life sustains itself, you realize there was never anything to control. There was only the quiet perfection of things doing exactly what they must, no more and no less. At first glance, chaos feels like the enemy of simplicity. It seems wild, unpredictable, and restless, a storm that refuses to be understood. Yet, if you watch long enough, if you let the noise play out, you begin to see the pattern hiding underneath. Chaos, when seen with patience, reveals itself as another form of order, one that hums beneath the surface rather than above it. Lightning, for example, never strikes at random. Each bolt follows a branching path determined by the easiest route through the air. Storms form where warm and cool currents meet, their fury shaped by temperature, pressure, and moisture, not chance. Even turbulence, that symbol of disorder, flows through equations of symmetry and repetition. The universe has no true accidents, only systems so intricate that they appear to us as confusion. Scientists once feared chaos because it resisted prediction. But when they looked closer, they found something remarkable. Within that unpredictability, certain shapes and ratios repeated themselves again and again. The edges of clouds, the outlines of mountains, the veins of leaves, the course of rivers, all share the same hidden geometry. Benoit Mandelbrot gave that geometry a name, fractal. From the Latin fractus, meaning broken, It describes forms that repeat at every scale. Zoom in or out, and the pattern remains self-similar and infinite. The coastline of a continent looks jagged and irregular. Measure it from a satellite, and you get one number. Measure it with a small ruler along every indentation, and the length grows larger, seemingly without end. The detail never stops. It simply becomes finer and finer. What appears chaotic from a distance reveals itself, up close, as structure multiplied endlessly. This is nature's handwriting, rough, elegant, and endlessly efficient. You can see it in the curl of smoke rising from a candle, in the swirl of cream dissolving into coffee, in the way galaxies spin across unimaginable distances. The same mathematical relationships govern all of them. Small parts mimic the large. The world repeats itself in miniature, as though the universe practices what it preaches: consistency, not control. The beauty of chaos lies in its humility. It never tries to be perfect. It allows for variation, for freedom within order. That looseness is what makes it alive. A tree doesn't grow each branch to identical length. It adjusts, bends, improvises, following light and space. Rivers wander because obstacles redirect them. The patterns remain, but never as copies, always as living expressions of the same principle. Chaos is how order breathes. There's something deeply comforting in realizing that not everything must be linear to be meaningful. The brain itself thrives on this balance. Neural activity is not a steady rhythm but a delicate chaos of electrical storms, bursts of energy, forming connections that allow us to think, dream, and create. When the mind is too ordered, it becomes rigid. When it's too chaotic, it dissolves. But at the edge between the two, where pattern meets unpredictability, creativity blooms. Life itself exists at that boundary. Think of a heartbeat. It's steady, but not mechanical. Each beat varies slightly in length and strength, a sign of flexibility. That gentle irregularity means the system can adapt to change. In the same way, waves roll toward shore not as perfect lines but as countless ripples weaving together. A forest's chorus of crickets, wind, and rustling leaves may seem random, yet it resolves into harmony when heard as one living whole. Nature's music is organized enough to endure and free enough to evolve. Even within your own life, chaos carries pattern. Moments that once seemed disconnected, a chance meeting, a sudden change, an unexpected delay often later align into something coherent. The pattern was always there. It simply unfolded over a wider timescale than the eye could see. Simplicity, in this sense, is not the absence of complexity but the faith that beneath complexity lies connection. As you rest now, you might picture the sea. The surface churns, foam rising and breaking, water folding over itself in restless motion. But far beneath, the current moves with slow precision, deep and sure. Chaos dances above order. Order anchors chaos below. The balance between them keeps the planet alive, tides that clean the shores, winds that shape the land, cycles that feed and renew. If you listen closely to that rhythm, you can feel it mirrored in your breath. Each inhale may differ, each exhale slightly uneven, yet the pattern continues unbroken. You are not separate from the world's apparent disorder, you are part of its design. The same physics that shapes galaxies and storms governs your pulse, your thoughts, your dreams. So when life feels messy or uncertain, remember that the storm is part of the pattern. The energy that stirs the surface also builds the calm below it. Simplicity is never destroyed by chaos, it is defined by it. Order is not the absence of motion but the intelligence within it, the quiet hand guiding what seems wild. Even in turbulence, the universe saves energy, balances forces, and finds its way home. Let that awareness settle over you. Beneath every noise lies a pulse. Beneath every pulse, a pattern. Beneath every pattern, a piece that never left, only hidden, waiting to be seen through the movement of things. There's a quiet moment in every discovery, a pause between confusion and understanding when the noise fades and the simplest explanation steps forward. It feels less like invention and more like recognition, as if the truth had been waiting there all along. This is the essence of Occam's razor, a principle so gentle and so enduring that it has guided centuries of thought without ever raising its voice. William of Ockham, The humble English friar who gave this idea its name lived in a time when the world was cloaked in mystery. The sky, disease, the nature of light and life, all were tangled in elaborate theories. He proposed something radical, that when several explanations fit the facts, the simplest one is usually correct. Not the easiest, not the laziest, but the one that assumes the least. The universe, he suggested, does not waste explanations any more than it wastes motion. You can feel the same principle in the natural world. A tree doesn't try 3 different ways to grow towards sunlight, it follows the most direct path. Water doesn't argue over which route to take downhill. It simply chooses gravity's invitation. Nature always picks the shortest distance between what is and what must be. Science, at its best, learns to do the same. Every great equation in history is a tribute to this razor, this act of intellectual trimming. The law of gravity, the conservation of energy, the relationship between light and time, all are breathtaking, not because they are complex, but because they are simple enough to fit the universe in a handful of symbols. They speak like haiku. Few words, endless meaning. The deeper science looks, the fewer words it seems to need. Occam's razor is not about cutting away depth, it's about removing excess. It reminds us that understanding is not built by piling on assumptions, but by revealing the clean lines already there. When we let go of unnecessary ideas, reality stands uncovered, precise, quiet, and unadorned. In our daily lives, the same whisper applies. The mind often invents elaborate reasons for small things, a silence we misread, a delay we fear, a decision we question long after making it. Yet more often than not, the truth is simpler. Someone was busy, not angry. The weather changed, not fate. The delay meant nothing more than time unfolding as it should. The mind complicates because it wants control. Simplicity restores peace by reminding us that not everything hides a secret. There's a certain humility required to accept simple answers. Complexity can make us feel intelligent, but simplicity demands trust, the willingness to believe that truth does not need embellishment. This trust is at the heart of both science and sleep. When we rest, we stop arguing with the world. We allow it to be what it is. That surrender, like Occam's whisper, doesn't reduce us. It aligns us with reality. Imagine standing in a quiet field at dusk. The air cools, the horizon softens, and the noise of the day falls away. What remains are the essentials: light fading, wind moving, heart beating. In that stillness, simplicity reveals itself not as emptiness but as truth uncluttered. This is what Occam meant. When everything unnecessary falls away, what remains is enough. The brain itself mirrors this economy. It prunes unused connections while we sleep, preserving the ones that matter. Learning strengthens pathways, forgetting clears space for new understanding. Even neurons know the value of less. The mind grows not by hoarding information, but by organizing it, finding structure where chaos once lived. Nature's design, mirrored in our own biology, always moves toward clarity. You might think of this principle as a kind of inner compass. When choices multiply and doubt clouds vision, simplicity points the way. Ask, which explanation requires the fewest assumptions? Which path carries the least resistance? Which story feels calm rather than clever? The quiet answer, the one that asks nothing extra, is usually the one that endures. Occam's razor does not cut with force. It separates gently, revealing what is already whole. That's why it's a whisper, not a command. The truth it leaves behind is soft-spoken but solid, like a stone underfoot after the tide has gone out. As you listen now, let that simplicity settle inside you. Let it remind you that understanding doesn't have to be loud to be real. The world, beneath all its explanations, runs on principles as clear as gravity and as quiet as breath. You don't need to hold every reason in your hands. You only need to recognize the one that remains when everything else falls away. In that recognition, the mind rests. Complexity loosens its grip, and thought becomes light again. What remains is not ignorance, but wisdom, refined by silence, the kind of knowing that asks nothing more than to be felt. Simplicity in the natural world is not just a principle, it's a rhythm of release. Nothing holds forever. Trees shed their leaves, Rivers drop their sediment. Even stars eventually release the light they've stored for millions of years. Nature survives by knowing when to let go, and somehow it never calls that loss. It calls it balance. The same is true for the mind. We spend so much energy carrying thoughts, replaying moments, building elaborate scaffolds of worry and memory. Yet when we begin to set them down, something remarkable happens. Clarity returns. The space once filled by tension becomes open again, like a forest floor cleared for new growth. Letting go is not about forgetting, it's about allowing room for rest. At night, your brain does this naturally. As you drift towards sleep, entire regions of thought begin to quiet. The prefrontal cortex, the planner, the critic, the one that insists on control, slowly steps back. Activity shifts toward deeper networks that repair, filter, and restore. Memories are sorted, unnecessary fragments are swept away. The mind becomes its own caretaker, tidying the day behind closed doors. It is one of the body's most elegant forms of simplicity, subconscious housekeeping that asks nothing from you but trust. Think of this as the mental version of gravity. Just as everything in the physical world seeks the lowest, most effortless state, so too does the mind. The more resistance we create through rumination, guilt, fear, the further we pull ourselves from that natural equilibrium. But when we allow thoughts to settle, they find their place. No force is required, only permission. The art of letting go begins with the smallest gesture, the breath. Inhale, hold, release. Each cycle a lesson in impermanence. The body knows this rhythm instinctively. No one teaches us how to exhale. We simply do it, over and over, until the pattern becomes the quiet foundation of every moment. Breath is the simplest act of surrender, and also the most essential. When you breathe slowly, the parasympathetic system awakens the part of your nervous network designed for calm. Heart rate falls, blood pressure eases, muscles soften. It's the same system that guides you into sleep, carrying you from alertness into something slower, deeper, wiser. You don't need to command it, you only need to allow it. In science, there's a term called homeostasis, the balance every organism maintains to survive. It's the reason your body cools when it's warm, rests when it's tired, and releases what no longer serves. Letting go, then, is not a moral choice, it's biology. Everything alive practices it constantly. The tree that clings to every leaf will break under snow. The river that refuses to overflow will stagnate. The mind that hoards every worry will drown in them. Simplicity is the courage to let the current move through. Sometimes, the things we hold are invisible. Regret, unfinished thoughts, small anxieties that hum beneath awareness. You can't see them, but you can feel their weight. Tonight, as you listen, imagine setting them down one by one, each breath an act of clearing. Not erasing, just releasing. You can always return to them in daylight if they're truly needed. But for now, they belong to the dark, where they dissolve into quiet. Letting go does not mean losing who you are. It means returning to what you were before the noise began, a mind at rest, a body at balance, a heart unburdened by what it cannot change. The natural world never mourns what it releases. It trusts the cycle to renew what is meant to return. You can trust it too. As the body settles and the breath slows, you may feel yourself slipping closer to that same rhythm, the state between waking and sleep, where thoughts grow soft around the edges. This is not drifting away, it's drifting home. The body recognizes the signal, warmth spreading through the limbs, the weight of gravity deepening, awareness folding inward. This is simplicity in its purest form, the ease of being exactly where you are, doing nothing more than existing. The universe, if you could listen closely enough, moves the same way. Planets circle in steady silence, oceans pulse with tides, air wraps itself around the planet in invisible waves. Each motion balanced, each release followed by renewal. There's nothing to fix, only the quiet proof that everything knows when to let go. So, as you rest here, remember, simplicity is not what you achieve by effort, it's what appears when effort fades. You are not required to hold the world together, it already knows how. Close your eyes if they haven't closed yet. Let gravity do its work. The breath continues, the mind settles, the body listens, the night takes over, and in that surrender, science and peace become one. If the universe has a language, it is written in patterns, arcs, ratios, rhythms, and numbers that repeat like verses in an endless poem. Mathematics is not a human invention. It is a discovery, a translation of the order already there. Behind every movement, every melody, every heartbeat, something simple is counting. The cosmos keeps time, and mathematics is how we listen. For most of us, numbers feel cold, distant lines of logic without feeling. Yet mathematicians often speak of beauty. They describe certain equations as elegant, graceful, or even perfect. What makes a sequence of symbols capable of inspiring awe? It is the same quality that moves us in art or nature. Simplicity revealing vastness. A few lines capture something infinite, and suddenly, complexity dissolves into clarity. Think of Euler's formula, a short, spare expression that links 5 fundamental constants in a single equation. Mathematicians call it the most beautiful sentence ever written. Why? Because it unites what once seemed separate: the circle, the line, the infinite, and the imaginary. So little, saying so much. The universe, in that equation, feels less like a puzzle and more like a poem. This sense of beauty is not emotional excess, it's recognition. The human brain finds satisfaction in symmetry and minimalism, in the balance between logic and surprise. Neuroscientists have shown that when people look at elegant equations, the same parts of the brain light up as when they see great art or hear moving music. The experience of elegance crosses disciplines. It's not about what we know, it's about how clearly we see. In nature, mathematics hides behind every curve. The spiral of a nautilus shell follows the Fibonacci sequence, growing in steady proportion so that each turn mirrors the one before. Sunflower seeds arrange themselves by the same pattern, filling space without gaps. Galaxies spin along invisible spirals drawn by gravity's hand. Order, repetition, ratio, simplicity, orchestrating complexity. Nature does not calculate, it behaves according to balance. Even chaos, as we saw before, submits to these laws. The branching of trees, the flow of rivers, the pulse of the heart, all can be expressed in patterns that repeat with variation, never rigid, always alive. Mathematics does not reduce life, it reveals the rhythm that life already follows. Simplicity, again, is not limitation, but harmony. You might picture mathematics as an endless staircase, each step rising toward abstraction. But each step is built from the same stone: observation. We count because stars appear one by one. We measure because shadows change with time. The first mathematicians were not scholars but watchers, shepherds marking cycles of moonlight, farmers tracing seasons. They noticed what repeated and learned that the simplest patterns predict the greatest truths. Over centuries, we learned to express those truths with fewer and fewer symbols. That's what mathematicians mean by elegance, the ability to describe vast phenomena with the smallest brushstroke. It's why a line describing gravity or probability can fit on a chalkboard yet explain the dance of planets or the spin of particles. The mind rests in that balance, effort reduced, meaning multiplied. Art follows the same rule. The more an artist removes, the stronger what remains. A painter leaves space for the eye to breathe. A composer uses silence to let the note resonate. Mathematics does this with ideas. The empty spaces, the unspoken parts, make room for understanding to echo. The beauty is not in the symbols themselves, but in the relationships they reveal. In a way, mathematics is humanity's attempt to dream as nature does without waste. Each theorem, each proof, is a small meditation on how little is needed to make something whole. A line becomes a circle with one rule: constant distance from a center. A square becomes a cube with one extra dimension. Infinity itself unfolds from a single principle: repetition without end. These are not tricks. They are glimpses into how simplicity shapes everything that exists. And so, when a mathematician calls a formula beautiful, what they mean is that it feels inevitable. Like the tide, it could not be otherwise. The elegance lies in that inevitability, the recognition that truth, at its core, does not struggle to be seen. It simply is. As you listen, you might sense that same peace mathematics offers. The measured cadence of breath, the slow count of heartbeats, the subtle symmetry of inhale and exhale, each a small equation perfectly solved. Life is not separate from these patterns. It is their living proof. You are part of the same arithmetic that keeps the stars turning and the atoms still. Simplicity, in this light, becomes something sacred, not emptiness, but precision, without waste. The elegance of mathematics reminds us that beauty and truth often share the same line, drawn quietly between order and wonder. Let your thoughts rest there for a moment, where logic meets calm. You don't need to understand every number to feel what they mean. Beneath the symbols, the world is whispering the same thing it always has, that the universe prefers simplicity and that beauty is the shape truth takes when it finally learns to breathe. Every form of beauty has a pause inside it. Between brush strokes, between waves, between one heartbeat and the next, there is a stillness that holds everything together. Music makes this truth easiest to hear. The silence between notes is not empty. It is the place where sound becomes meaning. Without space, music would be noise. Without rest, even the most perfect rhythm would lose its shape. In sound, simplicity lives in the spaces we cannot hear. A composer knows that silence is not the absence of music, but its frame, the quiet outline that gives melody room to breathe. Each pause teaches the ear what matters, and each rest invites the listener to listen more deeply. Science explains this as contrast. The brain needs separation to process sound. But beyond biology, there is something more human, the emotional relief that space provides. When a note fades, it leaves behind a small echo. That echo allows us to anticipate the next tone, to feel the pull of what is coming. The silence becomes a bridge between presence and possibility. In that waiting, there is peace. It's the same peace we feel when we look at an open sky or a wide horizon, moments where there is just enough emptiness to let the mind rest. Our nervous system responds to this rhythm instinctively. Studies show that when music pauses briefly, the brain releases small bursts of dopamine, a soft wave of pleasure at prediction fulfilled. We crave the pause, even if we don't know why. Silence, in this way, becomes its own form of harmony. It is the simplest act of balance, the meeting point between sound and rest, energy and release. You can hear this principle in nearly every piece of music that endures. In a lullaby, the gentle hush after each phrase gives safety to the listener. In a symphony, moments of stillness prepare the return of crescendo. Even birdsong carries rests between trills, small breaths that turn chatter into conversation. Nature itself composes with silence. The wind pauses between gusts, waves hesitate before folding back, night waits patiently before dawn. To listen deeply is to practice simplicity. Most of us fill silence as quickly as we can with speech, with movement, with thought. Yet when we allow quiet to remain, we discover that it does not demand, it gives. Silence resets the senses. It allows everything to begin again. In that renewal, complexity loses its urgency, and the mind remembers how to simply be. Sound engineers and neuroscientists speak of signal and noise. The signal is what we wish to hear. Noise is everything else. Our attention works the same way. When life grows too loud, meaning blurs. Silence filters the excess. It returns the focus to the essential. That's why the quiet after a storm feels sacred, the world reintroducing itself slowly, one sound at a time. You can feel this same rhythm within your body. Each breath is a phrase, each pause between breaths is rest. The heartbeat, too, carries its own tiny silence, the fraction of stillness between contractions. These small intervals of nothingness are what keep life from collapsing into chaos. They are pauses of survival, allowing renewal to happen again and again. In meditation and mindful practice, silence is not an achievement but a rediscovery. It is what remains when we stop filling space with noise. The mind may resist at first, frightened by its own stillness, but eventually it learns to listen. And in that listening, thought becomes music, gentle, measured, open. The awareness that arises there is not blankness, it is clarity. Even language itself depends on pauses. Meaning forms in the spaces between words. Without those tiny silences, we couldn't separate one idea from another. The same is true for understanding. Reflection, the silence after learning, is where comprehension matures. To absorb is to pause. To rest is to remember. If you close your eyes now and listen to the quiet around you, you may notice that it isn't truly silent. There's the hum of air, the pulse of blood in your ears, the faint rhythm of your own breathing. These are the softest instruments of your existence, always playing, always steady. The silence between them is not emptiness but invitation, the same space where both sleep and awareness begin. In the end, simplicity is not found in the abundance of sound, but in its restraint. The most beautiful music, like the most peaceful mind, knows when to stop. It trusts the quiet to complete what words and notes cannot. Between each heartbeat, between each breath, between each thought, there is a silence that belongs only to you. Stay there for a moment. That is where the world becomes simple again. Every structure in nature is a lesson in design. There are no wasted shapes, no superfluous ornaments, no unnecessary gestures. Everything has purpose, though purpose here is not ambition, it is balance. The leaf that widens toward light, the shell that coils to strengthen itself, the feather that curves to catch the air, each follows the same silent instruction. Use only what you need, and nothing more. Humans often think of design as an act of choice, of imagination guided by taste. But in nature, design emerges from consequence. What works continues, what fails disappears. Over millions of quiet experiments, evolution has refined form into function until the two are indistinguishable. The spider's web, the bird's wing, the honeycomb's cell, none are inventions in the human sense. They are discoveries shaped by time and necessity, simplicity distilled through endless repetition. Consider the honeybee. With no training in geometry, it builds a structure that mathematicians later proved to be the most efficient way to divide space. The hexagon fits perfectly together, storing the most honey with the least wax. The bee doesn't calculate, it responds to instinct, to the subtle forces of tension, gravity, and need. Yet through that instinct emerges a masterpiece of design. The same principle applies to snowflakes forming crystals, to coral building reefs, to neurons branching in the human brain. Order appears not because nature plans it, but because simplicity endures. This is what modern scientists call self-organization. It's the quiet intelligence of systems that design themselves. When enough small parts interact under simple rules, beauty unfolds on its own. You can see it in the spiral of a galaxy or the rhythm of waves crossing an ocean. The patterns that arise are both inevitable and unpredictable. Inevitable because they obey physical laws, unpredictable because life adds its own subtle variation. In the forest, branches split to capture light, and roots divide to seek water. The result is a mirrored structure, one reaching toward the sun, the other sinking toward darkness, both obeying the same rule. In rivers, deltas branch the same way, carving patterns in sand that mirror veins in your hand. It's as if the universe keeps sketching itself in different scales, repeating a signature it never tires of writing. The more you look, the more familiar it feels. Design by nature always serves more than one purpose. A feather insulates and lifts. A tree trunk supports and transports. Even the curve of a dolphin's body is tuned for both strength and grace. This duality function meeting beauty is the hallmark of simplicity. The most elegant solution is the one that accomplishes many things at once without drawing attention to itself. In human creation, we often chase decoration, mistaking detail for depth. Yet the most enduring designs, a bridge, a bowl, a line of poetry, succeed because they echo nature's restraint. They follow the same logic of efficiency, removing what does not serve until only the essential remains. Good design, whether human or natural, invites calm because it feels inevitable. Nothing can be added or removed without breaking its balance. Even the body you inhabit follows this law. Bones strengthen only along the lines of pressure. Muscles grow in response to use, then rest when demand fades. The heart, with its 4 chambers, is not complicated for the sake of complexity. It's shaped perfectly for its task, to move life with minimal effort. Every beat, every breath, every cell is designed not by thought, but by the refinement of simplicity. Nature's design also includes imperfection. No two leaves are identical, no coastline exactly symmetrical. This variation keeps systems flexible, able to adapt. Perfection, in nature's view, would mean fragility, too precise to survive change. True simplicity accepts irregularity as part of balance. The slight asymmetry of a face, the uneven rhythm of rainfall, the tiny randomness in a heartbeat, all reminders that harmony isn't rigid. It's alive. You can see this wisdom in the smallest details. The veins of a leaf form efficient routes for nutrients, but they also create beauty without intention. The patterns of a seashell follow mathematical sequences, yet no shell is ever the same. Design in nature is always personal, always local, always alive in its moment. That is what gives it warmth. Simplicity here isn't sterile, it's generous. As you rest and listen, imagine the world as one great workshop, crafting endlessly without noise. Every stone smoothed by water, every wing shaped by wind, every structure built by time. No hurry, no waste, no flaw, just the long patience of trial and grace. Nature designs through patience, and simplicity is its signature. When we learn to see the world that way, design becomes less about control and more about recognition. We begin to understand that everything, even ourselves, is already designed perfectly for its purpose. To live simply is to cooperate with that design, to move as nature moves, efficiently, quietly, beautifully. In every corner of the living world, survival favors simplicity. It's a quiet law, rarely spoken but always obeyed. Life, in its infinite creativity, is also ruthlessly efficient. When an organism grows too complicated, when it wastes too much, or demands more than its environment can offer, nature begins to edit. Over generations, the unnecessary fades, leaving only what works. Less becomes not just better, but essential. You can see this in evolution's long patience. Wings emerged not as new inventions, but as transformations of what already existed. The fins of ancient fish became the arms of amphibians, then the wings of birds. Each step was a refinement, a shedding of what no longer served. Even the eye, that miracle of perception, evolved through small adjustments over millions of years. From a patch of light-sensitive cells to a lens, to a focus, to color, every stage added function but removed redundancy. The result is beauty born of economy. Inside your own body, the same law works quietly. Cells that serve no purpose die and are replaced. Muscles strengthen only along lines of use. The brain prunes synapses that are no longer active, streamlining itself for clarity. At night, while you sleep, your mind clears unnecessary connections, keeping what's meaningful and releasing the rest. Nature's editing never ends. It's woven into the act of being alive. Energy, the currency of life, cannot be wasted. The cheetah runs in short bursts because endurance would cost too much. The cactus stores water not for excess but for survival. The bird sings to mark its territory, a small expenditure that prevents the far greater cost of fighting. Every act is an investment measured in energy saved. The principle repeats endlessly. Do what's needed, nothing more. When humans look at the natural world, we often admire its beauty without realizing it's also its efficiency we admire. The symmetry of a leaf, the elegance of a flight pattern, the structure of a web, they please the eye because they're perfect solutions. Nothing in them is decorative, everything earns its place. The world's aesthetics arise from restraint. This law of less is not about deprivation. It's about precision. Every living thing carries just enough to thrive, no more, no less. Complexity still exists, but it's layered atop a foundation of simplicity. A cell can repair itself because its structure is direct and functional. A forest can sustain countless species because each fulfills a clear role. There is freedom within the discipline, abundance born from limits. Even death, which we often see as nature's cruelty, is part of this balance. It's how energy circulates, how waste becomes nourishment again. The fallen leaf feeds the soil feeds the seed. The process never stops because it cannot afford to. The law is merciful in its consistency. Everything is transformed. Nothing is truly lost. In the modern world, we often forget this rhythm. We accumulate objects, thoughts, responsibilities, until we confuse more with meaning. Yet our bodies and our planet still operate under the same quiet rule. Too much becomes unstable, too heavy cannot last. Simplicity is not retreat, it's resilience. The systems that endure are those that adapt by reducing, refining, and realigning with what matters. Even the earth itself obeys the law of less. Mountains erode into plains, rivers carve valleys, shedding stone as they travel to the sea. Over time, the landscape simplifies, finding its most efficient form. The planet breathes through this continuous act of letting go, erosion as evolution, reduction as rebirth. When you pause and watch nature closely, you can feel that rhythm reflected in yourself. The need to simplify is not a trend, it's a biological memory. When you tidy your space, when you finish an unfinished task, when you take a slow breath and let a thought go, you're returning to the same natural equilibrium. It's your mind's version of evolution, conserving energy, restoring focus, aligning with life's quiet mathematics. Simplicity doesn't mean absence. It means that what remains has purpose. The strength of a tree lies in the way it channels force through its trunk, not in the number of its branches. The intelligence of the heart lies in its steadiness, not its decoration. The wisdom of life lies in its refusal to waste what cannot be replaced. As you rest here, think of the world as one vast organism, editing itself gently but endlessly. The sea smooths stones, the wind shapes dunes, the mind clears thought. Every system, large and small, obeys the same gentle command. Enough is enough. The perfection of simplicity is not minimalism for its own sake, but harmony reached through reduction. It's the reason life continues, not because it adds, but because it knows how to let go. Somewhere along the long arc of human progress, we began to mistake more for better. What began as innovation tools for survival, homes for shelter, systems for cooperation, slowly turned into accumulation. We built layer upon layer of complexity until the very structures meant to serve us started to shape and control us. Our cities grew denser, our days more crowded, our thoughts tangled in a web of choices. What was once elegant became excessive. In nature, every design is an answer to a need. A leaf grows only where it catches light. A bird's wing is no larger than the air requires. A river bends because stone stands in its path. There is no ego in these adaptations, only logic, only balance. But human invention carries intention, and with intention often comes pride. We build not just to survive, but to prove, to display, to possess. Somewhere in that pursuit, the quiet intelligence of simplicity gets buried beneath ambition. You can see this tendency everywhere. In cities, where towers reach higher than light can enter between them. In technology, where tools multiply faster than understanding. In schedules so full that rest becomes an act of rebellion. Even in thought, where the need to explain turns clarity into argument. We layer noise on top of noise, convinced that abundance equals meaning. Yet with every addition, we move a little further from ease. The mind itself mirrors this pattern. It constructs systems of thought, walls of opinion, towers of expectation. The more we build inside, the less room there is to simply be. Our ancestors once lived by the sun and seasons, their days guided by necessity. Now, even in stillness, the hum of complexity continues, the messages waiting, the decisions pending, the endless calculations of a life that rarely pauses. Overbuilding is not evil. It is excess misunderstood as achievement. Progress, at its best, expands possibility, but progress without restraint becomes weight. The paradox is that as we add, we lose. When every surface is covered, there is nowhere for light to land. When every thought competes for attention, meaning becomes diluted. Simplicity doesn't reject progress, it redeems it. It asks, What among all these layers still serves the purpose we began with? Architects sometimes speak of load paths, the lines through which a building carries its own weight. When design ignores those paths, when decoration outweighs structure, collapse becomes inevitable. The same applies to the architecture of our lives. We can carry only what our foundation supports. The rest must fall away. Psychologists describe cognitive overload as the point where too much information prevents decision. The mind, like any system, has limits. The more noise it receives, the less clarity it retains. That is why silence feels medicinal. It resets the balance. Simplicity in this sense is not an aesthetic, it's maintenance. It clears the channels through which energy and thought must flow. You can feel this when you declutter a room or finish a long-delayed task. The air feels different, lighter. The same happens inside. When we simplify, we don't reduce life, we recover it. The brain, relieved of excess, begins to think more sharply, to sense more deeply. The heart beats more steadily when it no longer races to keep up with imagined urgency. The body knows this truth before the mind admits it. Even civilization itself moves in cycles of expansion and refinement. Empires rise with abundance and fall beneath their own weight. Societies that rediscover simplicity through art, philosophy, or necessity tend to endure. The lesson repeats throughout history. Complexity accumulates until it breaks, and from its fragments simplicity returns, wiser and quieter than before. In personal life, that cycle happens daily. We begin each morning with intentions, gather experiences, add thoughts, add plans. By evening, the mind is cluttered again. Sleep, nature's nightly reset, strips away the excess. Dreams clear the noise, restore proportion. Each day, we are rebuilt, hopefully a little simpler than the day before. If you listen to nature, it speaks gently of limits. Trees grow only to the height that gravity allows. Waves rise only as high as the wind permits. Clouds hold only as much water as they can carry before they let go. The lesson is universal. Growth without balance leads to breaking. Simplicity, then, is not primitive. It's advanced wisdom, the final refinement of experience. The future, if it is to remain human, will depend not on how much we build, but on how clearly we can see what should remain. As you sit here now, perhaps with eyes half closed, notice how the body already understands this law. The heart beats only as fast as it must. The lungs take in only what they need. Nothing forced, nothing wasted. The intelligence of simplicity is already inside you, waiting for permission to lead again. In a world that builds endlessly, it takes courage to subtract. But every time we do, every time we clear a surface, release a thought, or choose silence over noise, we come closer to the way the universe itself was designed. Efficient, patient, peaceful. Less is not a loss. It is life's law written in the quiet language of balance. And when we learn to follow it, everything heavy becomes light again. There comes a point in every journey where forward motion no longer leads to discovery, only to repetition. When that happens, the wisest direction is inward. Simplicity, at its heart, is the art of returning to what is real, to what was always there beneath the noise. It's not a rejection of progress, but a rediscovery of origin. The essence of things waits quietly for us to notice it again. If you've ever walked deep into a forest, you may have felt this pull toward the essential. The deeper you go, the fewer distractions remain. The path narrows, the sounds soften, the air cools. Every unnecessary detail fades until all that's left is rhythm, footsteps, breath, heartbeat. In that narrowing, something opens. You begin to sense the structure beneath experience, the simplicity that was hidden by abundance. Nature teaches this lesson again and again. To reach the center, you must let go of what is around it. Humans often add layers to feel secure. We build systems, identities, and stories to keep chaos at bay. Yet the more we add, the further we drift from the still point where meaning lives. Complexity promises control, but only simplicity gives peace. To return to essence is to strip away what pretends to be necessary until truth stands bare and quiet. Science offers its own version of this journey. Every great theory begins with complexity and ends with elegance. Equations that once filled pages condense into a few symbols. Models that seemed unmanageable resolve into symmetry. Knowledge, when it matures, becomes simple. The closer we come to understanding, the fewer words we need. Nature doesn't speak in excess. It whispers its secrets in patterns too graceful to need explanation. You can see this process mirrored in the mind as it moves toward rest. During wakefulness, the brain hums with noise decisions, emotions, language, expectation. But as you drift towards sleep, the layers peel away. Sensation softens, thoughts dissolve into fragments, and identity loosens its grip. This is not losing consciousness. It is returning to essence. In sleep, you become what you always were beneath the noise, a rhythm of breath, a pulse of life, a fragment of the greater order. The same intelligence that shaped galaxies is there in the stillness behind your eyelids. The transition to rest is itself a form of simplicity. It's how the body remembers balance. The nervous system releases its grip, muscles yield to gravity, the mind surrenders its endless search for answers. The world does not end when you close your eyes. It continues, effortlessly, as if to remind you that being does not depend on doing. Sleep is not escape. It is the universe teaching you that nothing needs your constant attention to remain whole. The essence of simplicity isn't emptiness, it's fullness revealed. It's the recognition that peace was never something to achieve, only something to uncover. Every living thing carries this potential for return. A seed holds the memory of a forest, just as silence holds the memory of sound. The return to essence is not backward movement, but alignment, the point where energy and stillness become one. You can practice this in any moment. Step away from noise. Feel the air move against your skin. Listen for the quiet beneath ordinary sounds, the hum of distance, the faint rhythm of your own heartbeat. With every breath, you are reminded that simplicity is already happening inside you. You are not creating calm, you are remembering it. Tonight, as you rest, let that remembrance guide you. There's nothing to chase, nothing to finish. The world will continue to turn whether you solve its questions or not. The rhythm of your breath is enough to stay connected to everything that matters. Each inhale gathers the universe. Each exhale gives it back. Between the two, life balances itself perfectly. Sleep, when it comes, will not be an interruption to understanding. It will be its completion. The body restores, the mind resets, the spirit returns to its center. In that center, simplicity reigns. It's not a fragile calm, but a powerful stillness, the kind that holds planets in orbit and hearts in peace. That stillness is your essence, waiting for you to return. So let the mind settle, like dust finding the ground after a long day of wind. Let thought loosen its knots. Let every sound fade into its place in the background. You are home now, home in the quiet that shaped the stars and the silence that holds them. The world is simple again, and that simplicity is enough. Simplicity is rarely still. It moves, quietly, without hesitation or waste. The universe itself is in constant motion, galaxies spinning, rivers bending, winds drifting, light streaming endlessly through space. Yet within all this motion lies a remarkable calm, the calm of flow. Every system that endures does so by moving exactly as it must, not faster, not slower, but in harmony with its own design. Water teaches this lesson best. It moves with perfect obedience to its surroundings, finding paths of least resistance, shaping itself to whatever holds it. A stream never argues with gravity or stone. It simply adjusts, sliding around obstacles, smoothing roughness over time. The result is beauty that no intention could improve upon. Canyons, valleys, deltas, all carved not by force, but by patience. Water's secret is not strength but consistency. By yielding, it endures. Air follows similar rules. It swirls and drifts, carrying seeds, shaping dunes, whispering through leaves. You can't see it, but you can feel its design, invisible and absolute. When it moves freely, weather balances. When it's trapped, storms arise. Even the gentle rhythm of your own breath mirrors this truth. The lungs expand and release without command. Air enters, nourishes, departs. There's no tension in its motion, only trust. Light, too, is the same story written in another language. It travels straight until it meets something that asks it to change, bending through glass, scattering in water, resting on skin. It wastes nothing, pauses nowhere. The entire visible world exists because light moves with purpose but without struggle. It never resists the medium, it simply transforms within it. These forces remind us that simplicity isn't stillness, it's alignment. When motion follows natural order, effort disappears. When we force what should flow, friction begins. The same principle applies to thought, to work, to rest. When you move with your own rhythm, energy feels abundant. When you move against it, even the smallest task becomes heavy. Simplicity restores that alignment. It teaches us to flow again. You can observe this even inside the body. Blood moves through arteries and veins along carefully balanced pressures. Muscles contract and release in rhythm. The heart never hurries, it never delays. Every beat is a negotiation between oxygen and demand, a perfect compromise repeated billions of times. When that flow is interrupted through stress, tension, or fear, the system falters. Balance is not a luxury, it is the foundation of life itself. Engineers sometimes describe efficient systems as elegant, a bridge that holds immense weight with minimal material, or an engine that converts energy with little waste, earns that praise. Nature, however, has always been the greatest engineer. Its solutions are so seamless that we forget they are solutions at all. The way sap rises through trees, the way sound travels through air, the way a flock of birds turns in unison. All these reveal that function, when perfected, becomes art. In our own lives, flow happens when action feels effortless, when awareness and movement merge. Psychologists call this the flow state, a moment when skill and challenge meet in perfect balance. Time softens, the mind quiets. What remains is pure participation in what's unfolding. Whether painting, running, cooking, or thinking, this state brings peace not because it's easy, but because nothing extra remains. Simplicity, once again, is the art of enough. The same principle guides ecosystems. Nothing in a forest moves alone. Water evaporates into clouds. Clouds rain into soil. Soil nourishes roots. And the circle continues. Flow is not chaos, it's cooperation. Each part follows its function, and through that obedience, the whole system thrives. Simplicity is the architecture behind that harmony, invisible but absolute. If you listen closely, you can feel that same rhythm within yourself. Breathing in sync with the body, heart steady, mind quiet. The world outside continues its motion, wind shifting, stars revolving, and yet, somehow, you feel part of it rather than separate. That feeling is alignment, the human version of flow. It's the point where you stop trying to control the current and start moving with it. Tonight, as you settle deeper into stillness, let that image guide you. Imagine yourself as water finding its path, light finding its reflection, air finding its way through leaves. No force, no resistance, only movement shaped by the world around you. Sleep itself will come as part of that motion, not as an ending, but as a continuation in slower rhythm. The body knows how to surrender. The mind only needs permission. Simplicity is not the absence of effort, it is the wisdom of direction. When life moves with purpose and without excess, peace follows. Flow is how simplicity breathes quietly, endlessly, through every living thing. Life runs on rhythm. From the steady beat of the heart to the rising and setting of the sun, repetition forms the quiet backbone of existence. What repeats sustains, what sustains endures. Beneath all the seeming chaos of life, there is a pattern of return, breath to breath, tide to tide, day to night. It is through repetition that the universe remembers itself. The simplest systems are the most reliable because they repeat what works. A star burns until its fuel is gone, releasing light through the same reactions every second of its life. A seed opens in spring, grows in summer, rests in winter, again and again, year after year. Even decay follows a pattern. Matter dissolves, returns to soil, becomes part of something new. Repetition is not monotony, it is resilience. It is how the world maintains order without needing to start over. Our bodies echo these natural cycles. The heart's steady rhythm never pauses to improvise. The lungs follow their endless pattern of inhale and exhale. Each cell divides, renews, and dies according to its own clock. We are built from repetition layers of motion that, together, form stability. If you were to listen to the body closely enough, you would hear the quiet drumming of this constancy, the music of life's persistence. In neuroscience, there's a term called entrainment, the process by which one rhythm aligns with another. When you listen to music, your heartbeat subtly matches the tempo. When you watch ocean waves, your breath slows to mirror their movement. The body craves alignment because it brings efficiency. Repetition provides that synchronization, the reminder that stability doesn't require stillness, it only requires rhythm. Nature uses repetition not as decoration, but as design. You can see it in the spiral arrangement of leaves on a stem, in the repeating pattern of shells, in the cycles of the moon. Every repetition carries small variations, enough to adapt without breaking the pattern. This combination of constancy and change keeps systems alive. Without repetition, order would vanish. Without variation, life would stagnate. Simplicity lies in the balance between the two. Human life mirrors this balance. The comfort of a morning routine, the rhythm of footsteps during a walk, the familiar sounds that mark each day, all of these patterns create a sense of safety. The brain thrives on predictability. It learns faster when experiences repeat. It remembers best when practice becomes rhythm. Repetition gives structure to awareness, helping us distinguish between what changes and what remains. Artists, musicians, and poets all understand this instinctively. A melody repeats so that it can evolve. A line of poetry returns like a wave, each time carrying new meaning. A painter's brushstroke gains power through recurrence, the same movement layered until form emerges. Repetition, when used consciously, is not redundancy, it is emphasis. It says, "This matters, remember this." The natural world uses repetition to calm us for the same reason it uses it to sustain itself. When sound or motion follows a predictable pattern, the nervous system relaxes. The mind releases its alertness and begins to trust. This is why the rhythmic crashing of waves or the steady chirp of crickets can lull you to sleep. The pattern signals safety. In its presence, vigilance fades, and rest begins. There's also beauty in repetition's patience. A drop of water falling in the same spot will carve stone. A tide that rises and falls for centuries will shape a continent. The universe itself breathes in cycles, expansion and contraction, creation and decay. Through endless repetition, it refines itself. Every sunrise is both the same and new, a repetition of light that never grows old. In your own life, repetition is the quiet teacher of discipline and peace. Each day begins again. Each night invites rest. Every breath is an opportunity to start over. The simplicity of this truth is what keeps us grounded. You don't need a new world each morning. You only need to meet the one that returns. When you lie down to rest, you can feel this principle in its purest form. The heartbeat repeats, the lungs move in gentle cadence, the body surrenders to the rhythm that has carried it since birth. Sleep itself is a kind of repetition, a daily return to stillness, a reminder that renewal comes through cycles, not through constant invention. Repetition doesn't make life smaller, it makes it lasting. It is the steady pulse beneath every change. The quiet truth that simplicity doesn't mean doing less, it means doing what matters, again and again, until it becomes part of the world's heartbeat. As you listen, perhaps you can feel it, that steady rhythm in the chest, the rise and fall of breath, the repeating comfort of a night returning like a familiar friend. This is not monotony, this is life remembering how to keep going. When the mind is crowded, it mistakes noise for knowledge. Thoughts overlap like tangled wires, each carrying its own current until the whole system hums with confusion. But when the mind quiets, when it organizes, prioritizes, and releases, clarity begins to glow like light through clean glass. True intelligence is not the gathering of information. It's the ability to see what matters when the clutter fades. History's greatest thinkers understood this instinctively. They weren't necessarily the ones who knew the most, but the ones who could simplify what they knew. They asked small, precise questions. What is motion? What is time? What is love? What is truth? Each answer, however vast, began with subtraction. To understand the world, they first quieted their own noise. Science itself advances through simplification. Theories grow until they collapse under their own weight, and then a simpler one emerges that explains the same truths with fewer assumptions. The law of gravity, the structure of DNA, the nature of light, all examples of complexity distilled into essence. It's not that these ideas are easy, it's that they no longer contain anything unnecessary. The closer understanding comes to truth, the more elegant it becomes. The mind works the same way. When overwhelmed, it cannot see patterns. When clear, it notices everything. Psychologists have found that moments of sudden insight, those flashes of understanding that arrive seemingly from nowhere, happen when the brain shifts from effort to ease. Struggle blocks perception, relaxation invites it. That's why so many solutions appear not while thinking hard, but while walking, bathing, dreaming. Simplicity gives the mind space to rearrange itself. You can feel this process in daily life. After a long day of noise, when you finally step outside and feel the cool air, the mind begins to reorder. Thoughts that felt tangled untwist themselves. Problems shrink to their proper size. What remains are the outlines, the essentials. The minimal mind isn't empty, it's precise. It doesn't ignore, it filters. It knows what belongs and what does not. Monks, poets, and scientists all practice this in their own ways. Meditation, observation, writing, each is a form of cleaning the window between self and world. The less you impose, the more you perceive. When attention narrows to the present, details bloom. You begin to see the grain in wood, the rhythm in speech, the subtle movement of light. This awareness is not effortful, it's receptive. Simplicity allows the mind to tune itself to reality's quiet frequency. Modern life often glorifies busyness, multitasking, endless input, constant connectivity. Yet beneath that surface hum, the brain craves rest. It's designed for rhythm, focus, release, focus, release. When stimulation never stops, insight cannot form. The neural pathways that create understanding need silence between signals. The pause between thoughts is where comprehension breathes. Imagine a still lake reflecting mountains. When the water is agitated, the reflection blurs. When it settles, the image becomes perfect. The lake doesn't change. Its calm allows clarity to appear. The same is true of the mind. Insight is not forced into being, it's revealed when the surface stops trembling. That's why quiet moments feel intelligent. They make room for truth to show itself. Simplicity sharpens awareness because it aligns perception with purpose. The mind that tries to hold everything grasps nothing. But the mind that selects, releases, and focuses begins to see patterns hidden from the distracted eye. This isn't less thinking, it's better thinking. Precision through peace. The minimal mind wastes no energy on what doesn't serve understanding. You can practice this even now. As you listen, notice the spaces between words. Notice how comprehension arrives in silence, not in sound. The brain doesn't store every sentence. It keeps what resonates. The rest fades like background noise. This is how understanding evolves through gentle forgetting. The mind keeps only what contributes to meaning, just as nature keeps only what contributes to life. Insight, then, is not lightning but light, slow, steady, filtered through the clear air of a calm mind. It doesn't shout, it illuminates. When the mind becomes simple, it doesn't lose depth, it gains precision. Complexity, for all its charm, often hides truth behind decoration. Simplicity reveals it. As you breathe now, feel how the rhythm of thought slows to match the rhythm of air. That slowing is not dullness, it's refinement. It's the mind doing what it was designed to do. Find clarity through balance, insight through quiet, understanding through rest. The intelligence of the universe is not frantic, it's fluent, patient, calm. When your mind joins that rhythm, knowledge no longer feels like effort, it feels like peace. Every living system, from the smallest cell to the largest planet, carries within it a rhythm of activity and rest. Nothing in existence can sustain motion without pause. Even the universe, vast and seemingly eternal, breathes in cycles of energy expansion, cooling, renewal. Rest is not failure, it is function. Without rest, there can be no flow, no growth, no simplicity. In the body, this truth unfolds every day. Muscles contract, perform, and then release. Neurons fire, carry messages, and then reset in silence. The heart rests between beats. The lungs rest between breaths. Every organ relies on intervals of stillness to sustain its work. Rest, in this sense, is not separate from life's motion, it's half of it. The pulse of existence depends as much on pause as on performance. Sleep is the body's grand expression of this universal law. It's not a break from living, but the continuation of it in another form, a recalibration that allows complexity to become simple again. During sleep, the brain filters, organizes, and cleans itself. The body repairs tissues, rebalances hormones, strengthens memory, and restores energy. Every night, you return to equilibrium, to the simplicity that life requires to remain in balance. Science once thought sleep was passive, a suspension of activity. Now we know it's the opposite, a symphony of restoration playing beneath the surface. Neurons fire in patterns that strengthen learning, cells clear away waste, the immune system stands guard. Even dreams serve a purpose, blending memory with emotion, turning chaos into story. The night is the mind's workshop, quiet, dark, and essential. But sleep is not only biological, it's also symbolic. It reminds us that stopping is sacred. The world itself sleeps in its way, the sun setting, the earth cooling, creatures withdrawing to silence. Oceans rest between tides, forests still their movement at dusk, even the wind softens as night begins. This nightly pause is not absence, it's renewal. The planet exhales, and everything within it remembers to breathe again. In technology and ecosystems, rest appears as regulation. Computers reboot, forests fallow, fields are left to recover. Every sustainable system understands this rule. What continues without pause burns out. Balance demands restoration. Nature has no machines that run endlessly, no hearts that beat without rhythm, no rivers that never slow. Efficiency, paradoxically, depends on interruption. For humans, this principle extends beyond biology. The mind, too, needs its silence. The constant flow of thought, information, and reaction cannot continue indefinitely without wear. We often resist stillness, mistaking it for wasted time. Yet, the moments when we do nothing are the moments when the system resets, when creativity returns, when emotion rebalances, when clarity emerges. Stillness is intelligence, remembering its rhythm. Sleep is also the most democratic of states. It ignores wealth, rank, and reason. It treats all bodies equally, slowing the breath, lowering the heart, returning awareness to the quiet field from which it came. No matter how advanced or anxious we become, this simple act humbles us each night. We must let go to live fully again. That surrender is not weakness. It's wisdom written into the fabric of biology. In a way, sleep is the purest expression of simplicity. It's the mind trusting the body trusting the world, and the world continuing without supervision. There is no effort in drifting toward rest. Gravity helps, darkness helps, rhythm helps. You are carried by forces far older than thought. The science of sleep is also the poetry of letting go, a union between biology and peace. If you listen closely, you might feel that rhythm now. The slow rise and fall of the chest, the faint hum of life continuing beneath awareness. Each breath is a small rehearsal of trust. Inhale, exhale, pause, repeat. You do not control it, yet it continues perfectly. This is the intelligence of systems, the wisdom of nature's simplicity, working in you, through you, around you. As the night deepens, let this truth settle into the body. Every system rests, Every motion ends in stillness. Every wave returns to sea. Sleep is not the enemy of progress. It is its guardian. It keeps the complex simple, the living alive. When you close your eyes tonight, you join a universal act, the rhythm of restoration shared by all things that breathe, shine, or move. It is the pause that sustains the song. The world will keep turning, the stars will keep burning, and in your rest, the same quiet balance will continue, unseen but eternal. The world is built on invisible shapes. Long before humanity learned to draw them, they already existed, quiet blueprints folded into everything that grows or moves. Geometry is the language of balance, the art of proportion that keeps the universe in harmony. When we recognize it, we feel calm, not because we've solved something, but because we've remembered it. Peace has a pattern, and the body knows it instinctively. Look at a snowflake under magnification, and you'll see perfect symmetry. 6 branches radiate outward, each repeating the same structure in miniature. No 2 flakes are identical, yet all follow the same principle, balance through proportion. The same pattern hides in flowers, in shells, in the spiral of galaxies. What we call beauty is often geometry revealing itself, the quiet alignment between complexity and order. Architects and artists have long borrowed from these natural patterns. The golden ratio, the spiral, the circle, all echo forms found in rivers, leaves, and living tissue. Buildings designed with these proportions feel tranquil because they speak the same language the body does. We rest more easily in spaces that mirror nature's symmetry. Even if we cannot name the mathematics behind them, we recognize the feeling. This fits, this feels right, this belongs. The mind, too, has geometry. It arranges experience into patterns, seeking alignment between what it senses and what it expects. When those patterns match, we feel ease. When they break, we feel tension. That's why disorganization can be tiring and symmetry soothing. The brain is not just an observer of order, it is built from it. Neurons fire in rhythmic patterns. Neural networks form spirals and branches reminiscent of trees. The very architecture of thought mirrors the world it studies. Peace, in this sense, is not the absence of motion but the alignment of motion. Just as planets orbit in predictable paths, the mind finds rest when its thoughts move in harmony rather than collision. Anxiety scatters, peace arranges. When thoughts fall into proportion, each in its place, none dominating the rest, calm naturally follows. Geometry becomes not just a pattern in nature, but a state of being within consciousness. Consider the balance of opposites that defines the universe. Positive and negative charge, light and shadow, expansion and contraction. Each pair exists to stabilize the other. Remove one, and the other collapses. The same is true of emotion, joy and sorrow, energy and rest, expression and silence, all necessary to keep the psyche in proportion. Simplicity arises when we stop resisting one side and accept the symmetry of both. Peace is the recognition that opposites belong to the same design. You can feel this geometry in the body. Stand with feet aligned, spine straight, breath even. The posture itself carries balance. When one side of the body relaxes more than the other, tension appears. When both sides share the same rhythm, stillness follows. This physical harmony is the same pattern that governs galaxies, rivers, and waves. Symmetry on every scale brings peace because it signals balance achieved. Ancient cultures understood this without equations. Mandalas, labyrinths, and sacred architecture were expressions of inner geometry, ways to turn attention outward until it reflected inward calm. Circles represented wholeness. Spirals represented growth. Even now, people instinctively draw circles when they need to focus or breathe. Geometry is therapy disguised as art. It reminds us that life, when aligned, resolves itself naturally. Science confirms what intuition has always known. The brain releases dopamine when we encounter symmetry. Order brings pleasure, not because we crave perfection, but because our biology equates balance with safety. In a world of constant motion, symmetrical patterns promise predictability. The nervous system relaxes, the pulse slows, the breath deepens. In geometry, the body recognizes home. Peace, then, is not abstract, it's structural. It's the moment when our internal patterns match the world's larger design. When rhythm, proportion, and flow align, tension dissolves. That is why gazing at stars, listening to steady rain, or watching ripples spread across water brings calm. Each of these scenes carries visible geometry, repetition, radius, rhythm. The mind synchronizes to it without effort. As you listen now, imagine that geometry moving through you, breath tracing circles in the lungs, blood flowing in spirals through arteries, thoughts orbiting quietly around a still center. Nothing forced, nothing wasted. The architecture of peace is already inside you, repeating nature's perfect design. If sleep comes, it will not arrive like a curtain falling, but like a pattern completing itself. One thought aligns with another, one breath follows the next, until symmetry returns. The geometry of peace does not need to be built, it only needs to be remembered. If simplicity could move, it would move like water, steady, adaptive, effortless. Everything that lasts moves this way. The planets glide through space with no sound, following the same curve for eons. The ocean circulates its energy across the world's surface with seamless continuity. Even the smallest atom vibrates in balance, never still, never hurried. The secret of endurance lies not in strength, but in smoothness. In science, this quality is known as efficiency, the art of achieving maximum effect with minimum waste. Nature achieves it not by planning, but by being honest with its own laws. Every force follows the shortest route between cause and effect. Energy never travels farther than necessary. When systems become too complex, they begin to lose this honesty. They generate friction, resistance, and imbalance. Simplicity, in contrast, allows motion to flow freely. Consider the path of a migrating bird. It doesn't fly in a straight line, but in a curve that matches the wind. It glides to save energy, rising on thermal air currents invisible to the eye. Over great distances, this efficiency is the difference between survival and exhaustion. Fish in schools move the same way, turning in perfect synchrony so that the effort of one becomes the rest of many. Life moves best when it moves together, following patterns of shared simplicity. The human body, too, seeks this harmony. Every step you take is a cascade of motion designed to conserve energy, the swing of the arms, the bend of the knee, the shift of balance. Even when you're still, your body is adjusting, maintaining posture with thousands of micro-movements you never notice. The nervous system is a master of minimalism, billions of signals traveling precisely where they must, no further. You are, in every sense, a moving equation, a collection of perfect adjustments, keeping equilibrium intact. Artists and athletes understand this instinctively. The dancer's grace, the runner's rhythm, the craftsman's steady hand, each is the expression of practiced simplicity. After enough repetition, motion becomes memory, and memory becomes flow. Complexity dissolves into rhythm. That's why mastery looks effortless. Behind every smooth gesture lies thousands of imperfect attempts, each one a subtraction of what's unnecessary. In physics, this pursuit is mirrored in the principle of least action. The path taken by light, by particles, by motion itself, is always the one requiring the least energy. Even light bends when passing through different materials, not from confusion, but from efficiency. It seeks the simplest route between 2 points. The universe, it seems, prefers ease to struggle. Human behavior often defies this wisdom. We rush, resist, overthink, and overcorrect. We build tension into systems that should flow naturally in conversation, in planning, even in the act of thinking. But when we return to simplicity, everything realigns. Words become clear. Movement becomes graceful. Energy, once scattered, gathers itself into direction again. Simplicity in motion is not laziness, it's precision. It's knowing where to stop, when to yield, how to move without waste. You can feel it when a task feels natural, when your hands and thoughts seem to act as one. That moment of coherence is the body's way of whispering, "This is how it's meant to be." Even the natural disasters that seem chaotic obey this principle. Lava flows along the easiest path. Wind funnels through valleys of least resistance. Storms dissipate when energy has spread evenly. What looks violent is often balance returning to a disturbed system. The world restores itself through motion, never static, never forced. If you were to watch a leaf falling, you'd see the same intelligence at work. It doesn't drop in a straight line. It drifts, corrects, spirals, rests. Its path is random only to the impatient eye. To the patient one, it's a lesson in adaptation. The leaf follows air, the air follows gravity, and gravity follows the simplest curve imaginable, the line between energy and rest. Every motion that endures does so by following this law. Rivers carve their shape not by power but by persistence. Planets stay their course not by struggle but by perfect balance between pull and release. The human spirit is no different. It moves best when it stops forcing itself, when thought and action are aligned, when the path forward feels like something already known. To live simply, then, is to move like the world does, in rhythm, in honesty, in flow. Complexity often feels faster, but it burns out quickly. Simplicity endures because it wastes nothing. And just as the river carries water, simplicity carries meaning. It brings everything back to motion without noise, effort without struggle, and direction without force. Stillness is not the absence of activity. It is the perfect balance of forces, the quiet point where energy meets its own reflection and becomes whole. Every system, from the orbit of a planet to the beat of a heart, moves toward this equilibrium. The world appears calm not because it has stopped, but because everything within it is moving so evenly that motion becomes invisible. Physicists describe stillness through balance. When opposing forces equalize, there is no acceleration, only stability. A pendulum at rest, a bridge holding its load, an atom in its lowest energy state, all are examples of harmony achieved, not imposed. Stillness, in this sense, is the most efficient state possible. Nothing is wasted, nothing overreaches. The system exists in quiet perfection. In biology, stillness plays the same role. A cell maintains its health through homeostasis, constant adjustments that keep temperature, chemistry, and pressure within narrow limits. To the eye, it seems serene, but beneath that calm lies constant, subtle work. Even rest requires maintenance. Stillness is the body's way of performing at its most precise. The brain, too, thrives on stillness. When external noise fades, a different kind of activity begins, the slow synchronization of neural rhythms. During quiet reflection, regions of the brain communicate more efficiently, linking memory, imagination, and emotion into a single, fluid experience. That's why moments of silence can feel expansive. They are not voids, they are fields where thought becomes ordered again. Nature offers endless demonstrations of this living equilibrium. A lake reflects perfectly not because it has frozen, but because its surface tension balances every ripple into calm. Air feels still only when its temperature and pressure are uniform. Even mountains, those emblems of motionless strength, are in constant microscopic movement, expanding, contracting, eroding, rebuilding. Stillness is not an escape from motion, but motion made complete. Humans often misunderstand this. We imagine peace as stopping, when in truth it's synchronizing. We chase calmness through distraction or exhaustion, believing it's something to be achieved. But stillness cannot be forced. It arrives when the system finds alignment, when effort meets surrender, when focus meets ease. The art of stillness is the science of balance. Monastics, musicians, and scientists each seek this point in their own way. The monk enters stillness through breath. The musician finds it in a pause that lets sound expand. The physicist discovers it in equations where chaos simplifies into symmetry. The language differs, but the truth is shared. Peace is not static. It is motion resolved. In modern life, stillness is often undervalued, mistaken for inactivity. Yet it is the foundation of awareness. The most profound discoveries, scientific, artistic, or personal, emerge not from noise but from quiet attention. When the mind becomes still, perception deepens. You begin to notice subtleties once invisible, the soft hum of machines, the pattern of shadows, the faint scent of rain. Stillness is magnification. It enlarges what is usually lost to haste. The body mirrors this truth. When you slow your breathing, muscles loosen. When muscles release, blood flows more freely. When circulation steadies, the heart no longer races. Stillness cascades through the system, rebalancing everything it touches. What begins as quiet becomes health. Even time seems to behave differently in stillness. Moments lengthen, awareness widens, thought slows to match the body's rhythm. Scientists studying perception have found that when we are calm, we process more information, not less. The brain stops leaping ahead and begins to fully inhabit the present. Simplicity and stillness become the same act, attention given completely to what already is. If you've ever stood alone in a silent landscape, snow covering the ground, air suspended between breaths, you've felt this truth. It's not emptiness, it's fullness without motion. Every sound is sharper, every color more defined. You are not outside the world, but entirely within it, matched to its quiet pace. Stillness, then, is not the end of science, but its essence. Every equation, every observation, seeks this equilibrium, the point where understanding no longer strains to reach, but simply rests in knowing. The universe itself, for all its energy, moves toward balance. Stars burn until gravity equals pressure. Rivers flow until depth equals slope. Atoms vibrate until forces resolve. Peace is the natural conclusion of motion. When the body and mind align with that same law, we rediscover simplicity, not as withdrawal, but as presence. Not as silence for silence's sake, but as clarity, the realization that the world, left to its own rhythm, already knows how to be still. The world holds itself together through tension. Every sunrise owes its beauty to darkness. Every note in music finds meaning beside its silence. Without contrast, there would be no shape, no rhythm, no sense of direction. Simplicity does not ignore opposites, it depends on them. Peace is not the removal of struggle, it is the understanding that struggle and stillness belong to the same design. Physics calls this duality symmetry. Matter and antimatter, positive and negative, charge and discharge, opposites that define and sustain one another. Without polarity, energy could not move. Without resistance, light would never emerge. The universe itself began with contrast, a division between what expands and what holds, and every motion since then has been an act of reconciliation between those two forces. Biology repeats the same pattern. Muscles pull against one another so the body can stand. The heart contracts and relaxes. Nerves signal and reset. Life itself is balance achieved through opposition, creation that relies on restraint. When that tension disappears, the system fails. Harmony, in its deepest form, is not the absence of difference, but the cooperation of it. Nature never chooses one side over another. The ocean rises and falls. The moon waxes and wanes. Seasons turn with quiet precision, each yielding to the next. These are not conflicts. They are conversations between forces that know when to lead and when to follow. The world remains stable because its opposites keep trading places. The more we watch it, the more we understand. Simplicity is rhythm, and rhythm is built on contrast. Human emotion obeys this law too. Joy has meaning only beside sorrow. Hope shines brighter beside despair. When we deny pain, we also dull our capacity for wonder. The same nervous system that trembles in fear is the one that quivers in awe. Both are signs of life currents moving through the same wire. To feel deeply is not to break simplicity but to complete it. The mind finds calm not by silencing emotion but by accepting its full spectrum. In art, this truth has always been visible. Painters use shadow to reveal light. Musicians build tension before release. Poets balance sound with silence. Every masterpiece is a negotiation between what is given and what is withheld. Contrast makes form visible. Restraint makes beauty perceptible. The artist, whether knowingly or not, is a student of simplicity, learning again and again that less reveals more. Philosophy mirrors this in the balance between action and contemplation. Without action, understanding remains abstract. Without reflection, motion becomes meaningless. Societies flourish when they honor both movement, guided by thought, thought grounded in movement. Even morality depends on balance, freedom held by responsibility, compassion supported by truth. Opposites are not enemies, but partners in equilibrium. If you look inward, the same dialogue unfolds. The logical mind measures and analyzes. The intuitive mind feels and connects. When they cooperate, insight appears. When they compete, confusion arises. Simplicity of thought emerges not from choosing one over the other, but from allowing both to serve their purpose, reason to shape structure, intuition to fill it with life. The natural world teaches this through endless repetition. Lightning strikes because the sky holds too much charge. The strike itself restores balance between earth and air. Forests burn, then renew. Rivers flood, then retreat. In every cycle, tension becomes harmony again. Simplicity hides in that rhythm, not static peace, but the continual correction that keeps life in motion. The same pattern governs relationships. Two voices speaking in harmony do not sing the same note. They differ, yet blend. Love itself is not sameness but balance, strength meeting vulnerability, giving meeting receiving. The most stable unions, whether between people or ideas, are those that leave room for difference. Even the Earth's axis tilts slightly, allowing seasons to exist. If it stood perfectly upright, the planet would lose its rhythm of renewal. That small imperfection creates balance on a global scale. Simplicity, once again, is not precision to the point of rigidity. It's flexibility born of proportion. The world thrives not because it eliminates extremes, but because it finds meaning between them. You can sense this harmony in yourself whenever you pause between inhale and exhale, that small moment where two opposites meet, neither giving nor taking, just balance. The body practices what the universe preaches. In the end, simplicity is not one side of life, but the thread that binds both. Every joy carries its shadow, every sorrow hides its lesson. When we stop dividing the world into opposites, we begin to see the symmetry that holds it all together. Peace is not on one side of experience, it's the geometry drawn between them. Everywhere in nature, patterns carry purpose. They are not decoration, they are direction. The spiral of a shell, the symmetry of wings, the rhythm of seasons, each follows laws that serve life. These designs are not random artistry. They are strategies, refined by time, ways for the universe to repeat what works. When we look closely enough, purpose begins to reveal itself not as something added to life, but as something written into it. The same applies to us. Human purpose, too, begins as a pattern of behavior, of curiosity, of care. A single action repeated with meaning becomes rhythm. Rhythm becomes identity. We discover who we are not by deciding, but by noticing what we return to. Purpose is less an invention than a recognition of the patterns that already sustain us. In biology, pattern always serves function. The honeycomb's geometry maximizes storage while minimizing effort. The veins in a leaf distribute water along optimal paths. Even the branching of neurons follows fractal rules that shorten the distance between connections. Nature doesn't plan in advance. It simply evolves toward what works best. Efficiency, over time, becomes elegance. Simplicity transforms into purpose. For humans, purpose can seem more elusive because we live surrounded by choice. Yet even in our chaos, patterns form. A person who listens often becomes a bridge for others. One who observes quietly learns how to see what's hidden. Another who builds, teaches, or tends plants creates continuity where there might have been disorder. Each of these roles begins with repetition, a motion performed so often that it becomes meaning. Scientists describe this as emergence, complex outcomes arising from simple interactions. A flock's graceful flight emerges from each bird's small, consistent choices. A city's pulse emerges from countless individual routines. Meaning is rarely imposed from above. It builds itself from the bottom up. That is the quiet secret of purpose. It grows out of what is already being done faithfully. Purpose also adapts. In a forest, trees compete for light yet share nutrients through their roots. In a coral reef, every species plays its role, but none alone sustains the system. Purpose, in this sense, is cooperative, a shared pattern of contribution that keeps everything alive. Human purpose, too, expands when connected to others. What feels small in isolation becomes vital in context. The rhythm of one life strengthens the music of the whole. This is why repetition brings peace. Doing something meaningful again and again, a ritual, a kindness, a craft, aligns us with the natural law of persistence. Purpose is not found in novelty but in continuity. The sun rises each day not to surprise us, but to remind us that stability itself is sacred. The world doesn't need constant reinvention. It thrives on constancy performed with care. There's science beneath this poetry. Neural pathways strengthen through repetition. Each time we act according to a value or a goal, the brain rewires itself to make that path easier to travel next time. Purpose, biologically speaking, is a feedback loop: action reinforcing belief, belief shaping action. What begins as effort becomes instinct. Simplicity once again proves its power. Focus on one direction long enough, and the world aligns around it. Even mistakes belong to this order. In nature, not every pattern succeeds, but every failure refines the next attempt. Evolution is patient, learning slowly, shedding what doesn't serve until the design works. The same happens in human life. Wrong turns are not wasted. They shape understanding, narrowing the path toward what endures. Simplicity emerges not from perfection, but from practice. Purpose has rhythm, not urgency. It doesn't demand constant growth. It seeks continuity. You can sense it when something feels right without needing explanation, when time seems to align with action, when effort feels like flow. That's the feeling of being synchronized with your pattern, the state where life moves through you instead of being pushed by you. In the largest sense, the universe itself is a pattern of purpose. Energy transforms but never disappears. Matter cycles endlessly through forms. Stars die to form planets. Planets give rise to life. Life contemplates the stars. The circle completes itself quietly, without need for applause. Purpose, when seen clearly, is not dramatic. It is consistent, honest, and calm. You don't need to chase it. You only need to observe what repeats, what draws your attention again and again, what feels essential without effort. Those are the patterns that define your place within the larger design. When you follow them, life simplifies. You stop forcing meaning and start cooperating with it. In that cooperation lies peace. Purpose doesn't shout, it hums, steady and certain. Every breath, every gesture, every recurring moment of wonder is part of a pattern older than thought. The universe is not asking you to invent your meaning. It's inviting you to recognize that you've been part of one all along. Light is the oldest messenger. Long before sound, long before thought, light carried information across the dark, tracing the story of stars, planets, and time itself. Every beam that reaches your eyes has traveled across vast silence to deliver a message. This existed. Light reveals, defines, and connects. It is the thread that weaves the visible universe together. Physically, light is simple and strange at once. It has no rest, yet it gives rest to everything it touches. It moves at a constant speed, yet behaves both as a wave and a particle. It travels straight, but bends in water or glass. The rules that govern it are the same rules that allow us to see, to grow, to think. Photosynthesis turns sunlight into food. The same energy that nourishes leaves also powers our own vision. Every life on Earth is a translation of light into form. Scientists call visible light only a small part of the electromagnetic spectrum, a narrow band between radio waves and gamma rays. Yet within that narrow band lies the color of every dawn, every ocean, every face ever seen. Light compresses infinity into beauty. It's proof that simplicity can hold everything. Where light falls, pattern follows. Shadows form borders. Textures reveal themselves, and symmetry becomes visible. Painters, photographers, and astronomers all speak the same unspoken language. Light is not just illumination, it is understanding. To study light is to study perception itself. Every scientific instrument that peers deeper into the cosmos is, in essence, an extension of the eye. a tool to catch and interpret light's endless story. Even in darkness, light never truly disappears. It bends, scatters, hides, but it remains. Stars unseen by the naked eye still leave their traces, faint radiation, ripples in space, quiet echoes that instruments can hear. The universe is never silent, it just speaks in wavelengths we cannot yet translate. Simplicity in this sense is not about seeing less, but seeing more clearly. In the human mind, light plays the same role it does in the cosmos. Revelation. Insight is a kind of illumination, the sudden appearance of pattern where there was confusion. I see, we say when we understand. Vision and knowledge share a root because they share a function. They turn uncertainty into form. When we speak of enlightenment, we're not describing brightness in a literal sense, but the feeling of clarity that comes when truth becomes visible. Artists have always trusted light to tell truth gently. The soft illumination of a candle, the diffused sky of dawn, the way sunlight moves through leaves, each teaches that brightness alone is not enough. Contrast gives depth. Shadows give definition. Light without shadow blinds. Shadow without light conceals. Together, they create vision. Simplicity emerges not from removing darkness, but from balancing it. In psychology, this balance echoes again. Awareness works like a lantern in a darkened room, revealing a small circle at a time. The more still you stand, the more you can see. Rush, and the light shakes. Pause, and the details appear. Clarity is not achieved through intensity, but through steadiness. The calm mind perceives what the frantic one overlooks. Light also connects. The photons that touch your skin were born in the heart of a star. Some left their source before Earth even formed, traveling for ages to end their journey here, in this single moment of perception. To look at the world is to participate in an ancient conversation, the cosmos offering itself to consciousness through illumination. Even when clouds hide the sun, its influence persists. The air warms, plants open, tides respond. Light does not need to be seen to be known. Its presence is constant, its generosity unquestioned. In that constancy, there is a lesson. What gives life doesn't always demand attention. The quiet forces sustain the loud ones. The invisible supports the visible. To understand light is to understand simplicity at its purest. It moves without resistance. It gives without diminishing. It reveals without judgment. Every sunrise is the universe beginning again. Every shadow proof of form. Light does not argue. It simply travels, and in doing so, teaches everything it touches how to be seen. Simplicity, like light, does not shout. It clarifies. It draws borders softly, outlines truth without force, and when it meets darkness in sky, in thought, in life, it does not fight. It fills. It finds its way into cracks, reflects, scatters, adapts. That is how clarity works. It doesn't conquer complexity. It illuminates it until it becomes beautiful. What we see is only a fraction of what exists. Most of the universe is hidden from our eyes, concealed behind wavelengths too long or too short to perceive. What we call darkness is often just light we cannot detect. The cosmos hums with signals we do not yet understand, quiet frequencies, gravitational murmurs, invisible threads of force connecting galaxies across unimaginable distances. To live within this mystery is to live surrounded by the unseen. Science calls much of this invisible fabric dark matter and dark energy, names that describe absence rather than presence, because language still lags behind understanding. Yet these unseen forces make up nearly everything. They shape galaxies, guide their motion, and hold the universe in balance. What we can observe, stars, planets, ourselves, is only a thin surface floating atop a deep sea of the unknown. Simplicity, here, means humility, the willingness to admit that most of reality lies beyond reach. The same is true within the human body. Beneath awareness, millions of signals travel through nerves, hormones, and cells, guiding every heartbeat, every thought. We do not command them, we participate in them. Consciousness is a small island in a vast ocean of unseen coordination. Even when we believe ourselves still, countless processes continue quiet, automatic, perfect in their timing. The invisible sustains the visible. In sound, the same pattern appears. Every note carries harmonics too high or low for the ear to hear, yet those hidden tones give music its warmth. A whispered voice can fill a room not by volume, but by resonance vibrations traveling through air, walls, and body alike. The beauty of sound lies not only in what we hear, but in what we feel without noticing. Simplicity is that meeting point between knowledge and sensation, between what we measure and what we intuit. Light, too, hides layers beyond vision. Infrared warmth, ultraviolet glow, radio waves that stretch across space, all part of the same continuum. Our eyes capture only a narrow window, yet that window is enough to live by, enough to find wonder. Perhaps the universe designed perception to balance awe with limitation. Seeing everything might remove the need to imagine. The unseen keeps curiosity alive. In ecosystems, invisibility ensures survival. Fungi weave vast networks underground, exchanging nutrients between trees in quiet cooperation. Invisible air currents carry pollen and scent, guiding migration. Even communication among animals often happens beyond human senses through vibration, electromagnetic fields, chemical signals. The world is full of conversations we cannot hear, yet they shape every visible form of life. The human mind mirrors this structure. Thoughts rise like stars, but beneath them lies the subconscious, a hidden architecture of memories, instincts, and associations. It directs behavior without announcing itself. Psychologists call this implicit processing, the silent partner of awareness. Much like dark matter, it shapes our movement without revealing its form. The more we acknowledge it, the more gracefully we navigate ourselves. There is a quiet wisdom in trusting what can't be seen. Faith, intuition, empathy, these are ways of listening to the invisible. They're not opposites of science, they are its origins. Before measurement came observation, and before observation came wonder. The unknown invites both. The child staring at stars and the scientist mapping them share the same impulse, to touch what hides behind light. Simplicity begins when we stop fearing that hiddenness. The universe is not withholding, it is inviting patience. Just as radio waves wait for the right receiver, truths wait for the right stillness. The invisible is not emptiness, it is potential waiting to be perceived. You can feel this principle in the smallest of moments. A pause in conversation, a shift in light, the silence between heartbeats, each carries more meaning than sound or movement could express. The unseen is not absence, it's depth. When we learn to sense beyond the obvious, the world becomes larger, not smaller. Even technology, our window into the hidden, reminds us how limited perception still is. Telescopes extend our sight across galaxies, microscopes dive into the subatomic, yet both reveal the same lesson. The more we see, the more we realize remains unseen. Each discovery opens new questions, and in those questions simplicity reappears, not as an answer, but as acceptance. Perhaps that's the truest form of understanding, knowing that what we cannot measure still matters. Life depends on forces we'll never name, on balances we'll never fully explain. The invisible shapes every breath, every heartbeat, every orbit, and in acknowledging that, we find peace, the quiet relief that we don't need to see everything to belong to it. The visible world is only the surface of meaning. Beneath it, the invisible hums, steady, patient, complete. To live simply is to listen for that hum, to trust what speaks without sound, to sense the presence that needs no proof. Every living thing moves according to rhythm. The tides follow the pull of the moon. Flowers open and close with the sun's passage. Even the smallest creatures align their behavior to cycles of light and dark. Life is not a constant motion forward, it is a pulse, a steady alternation between activity and recovery. The rhythm of rest is the world's oldest law. Inside your body, thousands of internal clocks keep this rhythm alive. They exist not only in the brain, but in almost every cell, tiny timekeepers known as circadian oscillators. They synchronize metabolism, hormone release, body temperature, and alertness with the rotation of the Earth. Even when isolated from daylight, The body continues to hum in cycles close to 24 hours, as if carrying the planet's rotation within itself. You are, quite literally, tuned to the rhythm of the world. This rhythm doesn't just manage sleep and wakefulness. It governs when you digest food most efficiently, when memory forms best, when your muscles repair, and when your mind feels most creative. Every process, from the firing of neurons to the beating of your heart, follows waves, peaks of activity followed by valleys of stillness. In those valleys, restoration happens. Without them, the system burns out. Science calls this homeostatic recovery, the body's ability to restore equilibrium after exertion. When you rest, your cells replenish energy, your immune system strengthens, and your mind integrates what it has learned. Sleep is the most visible form of this recovery, but smaller cycles occur constantly: the brief pause between breaths, the momentary stillness between thoughts. These micro-rests are not wasted seconds, they are essential recalibrations that keep life smooth and sustainable. Even ecosystems follow this law. Fields left fallow renew their fertility, rivers rest behind dams before continuing downstream. The forest floor, seemingly lifeless in winter, gathers strength for spring. The rhythm of rest sustains the cycle of growth. Simplicity in nature often means knowing when to stop, when to yield, when to gather quiet before movement returns. Humans, however, often resist rest. We treat stillness as interruption, a delay in progress. Yet every system, mechanical, biological, emotional, depends on downtime to stay efficient. The mind's creativity declines without pause. Muscles weaken without recovery. Relationships strain without silence. To rest is not to withdraw from life. It is to participate in it fully. Rest is the hidden half of productivity, the unseen partner of all creation. There's a reason why night feels sacred. In darkness, the world equalizes. Temperatures drop, noise fades, senses soften. The nervous system follows suit, shifting from alertness to repair. The body begins to release melatonin, lowering heart rate and blood pressure, preparing every organ for renewal. These are not passive processes, they're acts of precision, timed perfectly by biology's internal rhythm. When you allow rest, you align with this intelligence. You step back into harmony with systems far older than thought. The lunar cycle, the heartbeat of oceans, the gentle pacing of breath. There's no need to command the process. It unfolds on its own. Rest is not earned, it is inherited. It's how the universe teaches balance to every living thing. As you lie here now, you are participating in that same law. The rhythm of rest surrounds you in the beating of your heart, in the slowing of your breath, in the quiet between sounds. You don't have to reach for sleep. You only need to allow the body to follow its natural descent. Just as the tide finds its shore, your awareness will find stillness. If sleep doesn't come immediately, that's perfectly fine. The rhythm knows its own timing. Each breath carries you closer: in, out, pause, the same pattern that governs galaxies and cells alike. You are resting within the same cycle that guides every living thing. Rest, in the end, is not an interruption of life but its completion. Simplicity is its music: repetition without resistance, peace without pause. The world breathes, so do you. In that shared rhythm, everything returns to balance. Silence is often misunderstood. We treat it as absence of sound, of activity, of meaning. Yet silence is not a void. It's a space where everything essential gathers. The natural world depends on it. Forests absorb noise through layers of leaves and moss. Oceans cradle quiet in their depths, and even the air between stars carries stillness vast enough to hold all motion. Silence, in its truest form, is the language beneath all others, a kind of intelligence that listens while the rest of existence speaks. In science, silence has its own form of data. In physics, the vacuum is not empty but alive, with potential particles flickering in and out of existence, energy vibrating below the threshold of perception. In neuroscience, silence allows the brain's default mode network to activate a system that connects memory, imagination, and emotion. When external input fades, inner connections strengthen. The mind begins to organize itself, shaping insight from stillness. Silence, biologically, is construction time. Artists and composers understand this intuitively. A pause in music gives the next note meaning. The quiet space on a canvas makes color sing. In writing, the white margin around words allows the reader to breathe. Without silence, expression collapses into noise. Simplicity thrives not in the abundance of sound, but in the precision of its placement. Even conversation depends on silence. Between sentences, it creates understanding. Between people, it builds trust. The pause before a reply is often more meaningful than the words that follow. Silence shows attention. It's the invisible part of listening, the sign that someone has made space for another's voice to exist. Nature mirrors this principle perfectly. After a storm, there is a silence that feels almost alive. The air seems denser, as if holding its breath. In that stillness, you can sense renewal, beginning the quiet recalibration of soil, sky, and sound. Silence is not the opposite of movement. It's the condition that allows movement to regain direction. The human body, too, seeks silence. The heart's rhythm depends on micro-pauses between beats. The brain needs brief moments of sensory rest to reset its attention. Even within speech, silence separates meaning from confusion. When life grows too loud, it's not just discomfort we feel, it's a physiological signal, the body asking for balance. Modern life has made silence rare. We fill it with music, screens, and chatter, fearing the unease that sometimes arises when the world quiets down. Yet that discomfort is not emptiness, it's the sound of attention returning home. When external noise fades, the internal begins to speak, subtle thoughts, unprocessed emotions, forgotten insights. Silence, when accepted, becomes teacher. In scientific laboratories, silence is often the key to discovery. Sensitive instruments must be isolated from vibration and noise to measure the smallest phenomena: gravitational waves, atomic motion, cosmic background radiation. To hear the universe whisper, scientists must first create silence deep enough to notice it. Understanding grows best in quiet environments. The same is true for inner discovery. When the mind quiets, awareness expands, thoughts lose their urgency, feelings untangle, and priorities rearrange themselves. Silence gives shape to understanding by letting it breathe. What once felt complex becomes simple again, not because the world has changed, but because perception has cleared. Silence is intelligent because it contains potential. Every beginning hides in it, every idea, every creation, every word. The universe itself began in stillness before expanding into motion. That primal quiet remains within all things, waiting patiently to be remembered. In moments of reflection, silence becomes communication. It doesn't speak in language, but in alignment, the way your breath slows, the way your shoulders drop, the way your thoughts soften without effort. Silence is not passive, it's the system's natural reset. When allowed to exist, it restores coherence to body and mind alike. You can practice listening to it anywhere. Between the sound of your breath and the hum of the world, there is always a subtle pause, a gap that holds the entire pattern of life. That gap is not nothing, it's everything simplified. It's where awareness returns to itself, where the observer and the observed briefly become one. Simplicity, in the end, is not the absence of detail, but the presence of silence between them. In that still interval, life finds its rhythm again. Sound gives way to sense, thought gives way to truth, and in the quiet beneath both, intelligence listens. Understanding is not a flash of brilliance, it's a slow unfolding, a pattern revealing itself one connection at a time. Like a seed sprouting or a planet forming from dust, comprehension builds shape gradually. Each thought, each observation, each question adds a contour. What begins as chaos turns, through attention, into coherence. Simplicity is the shape that emerges when everything unnecessary falls away. The human brain is a builder of patterns. Billions of neurons exchange signals across synapses, shaping networks that represent perception and memory. Every time we learn, we change physically, new connections form, old ones strengthen or fade. This adaptability, called neuroplasticity, allows thought to evolve its own geometry. Understanding, quite literally, has structure. It's the invisible architecture of knowing. Science reveals that the brain doesn't store information like a library, it weaves it like a tapestry. Each idea links to others through association, forming clusters that light up together. When two seemingly unrelated concepts connect, insight occurs, the mind recognizing a pattern it didn't know it already possessed. The spark of understanding is simply connection made visible. The same principle governs nature. Molecules arrange themselves into crystalline forms not by command but by compatibility. Patterns of symmetry arise wherever forces balance. Snowflakes, shells, galaxies, each obeys the logic of minimal energy, creating beauty as a byproduct of efficiency. Understanding follows the same law. When the pieces fit, tension dissolves, and beauty appears as clarity. Language mirrors this process. Sentences shape meaning the way rivers carve valleys, slowly, persistently, through flow. Grammar and rhythm create pathways for comprehension. The structure of language, subject, verb, object, is not arbitrary. It reflects how the human mind organizes reality. We think in sequence, so we speak in sequence. Simplicity in expression is not a reduction of thought, but its natural alignment. Philosophers once believed that truth existed outside us, waiting to be discovered like a fixed landscape. But modern science suggests something more fluid. Understanding is a relationship between observer and observed, a dialogue, not a conquest. What we see depends on how we look. Perspective shapes perception, and perception reshapes truth. Simplicity arises when this dialogue finds balance, when we stop trying to force meaning and start listening to what reality already offers. Even misunderstanding has its function. Confusion signals growth. It shows that old frameworks no longer suffice. The discomfort that comes before clarity is like tension in music before resolution. The mind resists disorder because it senses a new pattern forming just beyond reach. Simplicity, when it arrives, feels like release, not because the world changed, but because our view finally aligned with it. In art and science alike, form and meaning grow together. A physicist's equation, a sculptor's line, a poet's phrase, each distills complexity into structure. When form and meaning match perfectly, we call it elegant. Elegance is understanding in motion, the shape of thought fitting the shape of truth. That moment of recognition when the design feels inevitable is the mind touching harmony. Even relationships follow this geometry. Two people begin as parallel lines, separate yet moving in similar directions. Over time, shared experiences create intersections, points of understanding where lives overlap. Each exchange reshapes perception until empathy emerges. Understanding between people is built the same way it is within the mind, through connection, through patience, through the quiet removal of what no longer fits. Nature demonstrates this humility constantly. Water understands the landscape not by mapping it, but by flowing through it. Light understands space by traveling across it. The mind understands life the same way, not by mastering it, but by moving within it, letting experience carve its channels. The shape that remains afterward is understanding. Simplicity doesn't mean knowing less. It means knowing clearly. It's the difference between a tangled forest and a single tree illuminated by light. The forest still exists, but you see its essence through one living example. True comprehension is like that, not the erasure of detail, but the revelation of design. Every time understanding deepens, the mind becomes quieter. There's no need to over-explain or defend. The shape itself communicates balanced, complete, effortless. That's why simplicity feels peaceful. It's not that questions disappear. It's that their answers now share the same form as the questions themselves. Harmony replaces noise. In the end, understanding is not possession but participation. You don't own a truth, you align with it. And in that alignment, thought, perception, and existence briefly become one seamless pattern. The living shape of simplicity itself. Energy moves through everything. It animates the smallest atom and drives the motion of galaxies. It hums beneath thought, breath, and heartbeat. Every star, Every ocean current, every living being is part of one continuous circulation, the universe exchanging itself endlessly between forms. The story of simplicity is, in many ways, the story of balance, energy flowing where it's needed, never lost, only transformed. Physics describes this through the law of conservation. Energy cannot be created or destroyed, it only changes form. Light becomes heat, motion becomes sound, potential becomes kinetic. Even decay is not disappearance but transition. The same energy that fuels the growth of a tree later feeds the soil when that tree falls. In this constant transformation, nature wastes nothing. Simplicity is the perfection of exchange. You can see this principle in the smallest systems. Inside the body, the balance between energy intake and expenditure sustains life. Cells convert food into motion, thought, and warmth, each process regulated by feedback loops that maintain equilibrium. When we move, think, or rest, the body redistributes its power seamlessly. Even fatigue is a signal of imbalance, a gentle request from the system to restore order through stillness. Emotion follows a similar law. Feelings, too, are forms of energy seeking balance. Anger builds until it finds expression, sorrow deepens until it finds meaning, joy expands until it shares itself. Suppressed energy doesn't vanish, it lingers, pressing for transformation. When emotion is understood rather than resisted, it disperses naturally. Peace is the emotional version of equilibrium, the point where energy has found its rightful flow. Nature achieves this balance through cycles. Water evaporates, condenses, and returns as rain. Heat rises, cools, and settles again. Winds form from differences in temperature and dissolve when equality returns. The same process governs thought. Ideas arise from tension, questions, curiosity, conflict, and settle into understanding when the mental temperature equalizes. Equilibrium, whether physical or mental, is not stillness but harmony. Simplicity arises when systems no longer fight themselves. Complexity consumes energy, harmony restores it. The human mind often mistakes struggle for effort, believing progress demands resistance. Yet energy flows most freely through alignment, not through force. The tree bends in the wind to avoid breaking, rivers curve to maintain momentum. Life moves forward by yielding to the path of least resistance. That is not weakness, it is wisdom built into existence. Science and spirituality meet in this understanding. Both describe a universe governed by feedback action followed by correction, expansion followed by return. Every imbalance calls forth its counterpart. The body sweats to cool, the planet radiates heat to space, stars collapse into themselves to form new ones. In this rhythm, nothing is wasted and nothing stands apart. Balance is the universe's quiet intelligence. Human societies echo this same law, though imperfectly. Economies stabilize after inflation and scarcity. Ecosystems rebound when given time to heal. Even relationships move toward understanding after conflict. These corrections may take time, but they prove that equilibrium is the natural destination of all things. The further a system drifts from balance, the stronger the pull to return. Energy in balance creates beauty. The graceful flight of a bird, the glide of a swimmer, the poise of a dancer, all depend on even distribution of force. The same applies to thought and feeling. When awareness and emotion move together, understanding feels light, almost effortless. The moment of insight, the feeling of calm, the sense that this fits all are signs that energy has reached equilibrium. This balance doesn't eliminate movement, it perfects it. Think of a pendulum. At its midpoint, it holds potential energy ready to move either way. That poised stillness contains both motion and rest. Simplicity feels like that, full, complete, yet peaceful. Nothing missing, nothing excess. Even on a cosmic scale, the universe seeks this symmetry. Expansion slows as gravity tugs inward. Chaos cools into structure. Galaxies find balance between collapse and dispersal. Every atom vibrates within limits that keep it stable. Existence depends on that delicate equilibrium. Without it, matter would unravel, light would scatter, and time itself might lose meaning. Balance is the quiet law that lets everything endure. In your own life, Energy and equilibrium are always in dialogue. Work and rest, giving and receiving, holding on and letting go, each pair completes the other. When these forces align, the noise fades, and life begins to flow again. Simplicity is the feeling of energy in its rightful place, no longer scattered, no longer struggling, only circulating smoothly through the system of being. To live simply is to join this rhythm, to recognize that balance is not something to achieve, but something to remember. The universe has been doing it perfectly all along. In nature, there are no real beginnings or endings. Every event flows into another, each transformation quietly linked to what came before and what will follow. Water becomes vapor, vapor becomes rain, rain becomes river, and the cycle repeats without pause. Continuity is the hidden structure of existence, the thread that keeps the world coherent even as everything within it changes. Science describes continuity as the property of smoothness, the assurance that systems evolve without sudden gaps. In mathematics, a continuous function means that every point connects seamlessly to its neighbor. No leap, no break, only gentle transition. The same principle shapes the cosmos. Galaxies form not from chaos but from gradients, density flowing into structure, energy flowing into matter. The universe, for all its vastness, unfolds like silk unrolling, one motion, uninterrupted. Life mirrors this principle perfectly. Cells divide and replace themselves, so that the body you inhabit today is not the same one you had years ago, yet it feels continuous. Memory preserves identity through time's passing, creating a sense of self that survives constant renewal. Every breath ends one moment and begins another, yet the rhythm never stops. The illusion of separation hides the truth of connection. In ecosystems, continuity ensures stability. Fallen leaves decompose into soil, feeding new growth. Predators and prey balance each other's numbers. Even extinction, painful as it seems, makes room for new forms of life. The forest floor teaches this law better than any textbook. Nothing vanishes, it simply changes purpose. Simplicity in nature means seamless exchange, no waste, no boundary, only transformation. Human existence follows this same curve, though we often resist it. We name beginnings, birth, projects, relationships, and mark endings, deaths, farewells, completions, as if the line truly breaks. Yet beneath those rituals lies an unbroken field of cause and effect, of influence and inheritance. The teacher's words continue in the student, the artist's vision in those it inspires, the parent's care in generations unseen. Continuity is not immortality, it is participation in the ongoing pattern. Energy itself proves this truth. The sunlight striking your skin today began its journey inside a star long before your world existed. The air you breathe carries molecules exhaled by ancient forests. Even the atoms in your body were forged in the hearts of long-extinguished suns. Continuity runs not only through time but through matter itself. You are made of persistence, of what the universe decided was too essential to erase. Philosophy echoes this idea in the notion of flux, the understanding that change and stability are not opposites, but expressions of the same process. Rivers never stop moving, yet the shape of the river endures. Identity, whether of a person or a world, is continuity wearing the mask of change. To see life clearly is to stop fearing the current and start flowing with it. Simplicity, then, is the art of trusting continuity. When you stop demanding that things stay fixed, peace returns. The mind relaxes when it no longer clings to beginnings or mourns endings. What looks like loss is often only transition. What feels like failure is merely redirection. Continuity teaches that every motion, every pause, contributes to the same unfolding story. You can sense this continuity in small, everyday ways. The warmth of sunlight moving across a wall, the way music lingers in the air after the final note, the faint imprint of a conversation that changes the course of your thinking. None of these things truly end. They fade gradually, leaving traces that shape what follows. Simplicity lies in noticing those traces, the gentle persistence of everything real. In science, continuity also means predictability, the comfort of knowing that nature will not betray its laws. Gravity does not take a day off, light does not forget to travel. This reliability gives the universe its calm dignity. Even chaos, when studied long enough, reveals patterns of continuity, turbulence forming loops, randomness revealing rhythm. What feels disordered is often just a continuity too large or subtle for us to perceive. Human creativity thrives under this same law. The artist continues the work of those before, refining, evolving, extending a line of thought that began long ago. Each generation adds its own verse to a song that never ends. Simplicity, again, is not starting from nothing. It is adding to the continuum with grace. If you look closely, continuity is everywhere in the pulse of your wrist, in the turning of the planet, in the flow of ideas through time. To live with awareness of it is to live without fear of interruption. There is no absolute stop, only change in tempo. Even silence carries the echo of what came before and the promise of what follows. In that realization, simplicity becomes eternal. Life is not a series of separate moments. It is one continuous act of becoming the quiet, unbroken rhythm through which the universe keeps its shape. The extraordinary hides in plain sight, the pulse of life, the symmetry of a leaf, the quiet rhythm of footsteps on a morning walk. All of it holds elegance so perfect that it often goes unnoticed. We learn to look past it in search of spectacle, yet simplicity lives closest to the ground. The more we slow down, the more we realize that the ordinary world, left unadorned, contains all the grace we keep chasing elsewhere. Science shows that even the smallest details hold complexity beyond comprehension. The surface of water, for instance, forms its own invisible tension, strong enough to hold the weight of an insect. A single grain of sand, viewed under a microscope, reveals mountains and valleys carved by wind and time. Dust floating through sunlight carries particles older than the earth itself. The ordinary is not simple because it is lacking, it is simple because it is complete. The human eye, when allowed to linger, begins to recognize this completeness. The curl of steam rising from a cup of tea, the shifting colors of soap bubbles, the soft pattern of skin under light, each is a symphony of structure, color, and motion. Beauty, at its core, is not a matter of rarity but of attention. Simplicity asks nothing more than that we look. In daily life, this awareness can feel like rediscovery. The sound of a pencil scratching on paper, the rhythm of rain against glass, the smell of bread in the air, these are experiences so common that we forget their perfection. Yet each one carries the fingerprint of physics, chemistry, and time. They are science made visible in our smallest moments. Philosophers have long called this recognition presence, the act of meeting reality as it is, without resistance or distraction. Presence turns repetition into ritual. A daily walk becomes meditation. Washing dishes becomes conversation with water and motion. The ordinary reveals its design when we stop demanding that it entertain us. Simplicity turns routine into grace. Children understand this instinctively. They watch an ant carry a crumb with the focus of a scholar, or stare at a puddle as if it were an ocean. Their curiosity has not yet been filtered by efficiency. To them, the ordinary is astonishing because they have not learned to overlook it. Perhaps wisdom is not the acquisition of knowledge, but the recovery of wonder, a return to the childlike gaze that finds depth in every surface. Artists, too, seek this vision. They paint light falling on fruit, write songs about ordinary afternoons, photograph faces lit by windows instead of spotlights. What makes these works powerful is not novelty but sincerity, the courage to say, "This is enough." Simplicity in art reflects simplicity in life. Attention sharpened until the familiar becomes radiant. In nature, elegance appears most clearly in function. The spiral of a snail's shell, the grid of honeycomb, the arc of a bird's wing, each designed through repetition, each shaped for purpose. Efficiency becomes beauty because it wastes nothing. A spider web glistening with dew is not decoration, it's engineering perfected through simplicity. The ordinary, when seen closely, dissolves the distinction between science and spirituality. The equation balancing energy is the same as the prayer of gratitude, both acknowledgements of order, both expressions of belonging. The beauty of a sunrise does not require belief. It only requires eyes open long enough to see it. In an age that values spectacle, returning to the ordinary feels radical. Yet it's there that life becomes peaceful. When we stop chasing intensity, our senses begin to recover their natural sensitivity. A breeze on the skin, a scent of earth after rain, the warmth of another hand, all these become extraordinary again. The elegance of simplicity is not in grand gestures but in quiet alignment with what is real. There is a symmetry in the ordinary that steadies the mind. The day rises and falls, the body moves and rests, the world breathes in and out. To live simply is to recognize this rhythm and join it willingly. The heart finds calm not in escape, but in participation, in being part of the pattern, rather than trying to stand apart from it. When seen with care, nothing is small. Each atom spins with purpose, each sound carries distance, each moment holds continuity with everything before and after it. The ordinary world, viewed through this lens, is the universe made intimate. Elegance, it turns out, was never rare. It was only waiting to be noticed. Everything that begins eventually returns. The seed that becomes the tree ends once more as soil. The wave that rises must fall back to sea. Even light, racing outward from stars, is eventually absorbed and re-emitted in endless transformation. The circle of simplicity is this: nothing is ever truly lost, only changed into another form of the same quiet order. The universe is not a line but a loop, the constant renewal of pattern, motion, and meaning. We live within that circle every day. The breath that leaves your lungs becomes air for another living thing. The thoughts you share ripple outward in ways you'll never trace. The body, made of ancient dust, will one day return to dust again, and even that dust will shine part of clouds, of oceans, of new beginnings. Simplicity is not the absence of depth. It's the realization that everything fits. The natural world repeats this truth in every rhythm. The moon grows and fades, rivers widen and narrow, the seasons exchange colors in a conversation older than memory. This constancy within change is the foundation of peace. Simplicity is not a fragile calm that breaks under motion, it's calm that endures because it moves with the flow. Science names this balance entropy and renewal, a dance between disorder and structure. Every system tends toward diffusion, yet life continually gathers itself again. Cells repair, ecosystems adapt, galaxies reorganize. Out of apparent chaos comes coherence. The circle holds. What we call simplicity is the invisible intelligence that keeps this cycle from collapsing, the law of enough, guiding everything back to harmony. In the human heart, the same principle applies. We grow, we lose, we learn, and then we begin again. Each cycle leaves behind something softer, wiser, clearer. The experiences that once felt disjointed eventually connect, forming an inner geometry of understanding. When we recognize that pattern, we stop fearing repetition. We see that life is not looping in vain, but refining itself through return. The circle of simplicity is present even in thought. Every idea eventually leads back to its origin, the quiet moment of wonder that sparked it. Curiosity begins in silence, travels through exploration, and returns to silence once more, but deeper now, more aware. The scientist finishing an experiment and the artist setting down a brush both arrive at the same place, the calm recognition that truth needs no ornament. You can witness this completeness in the smallest motion, a drop of water falling, spreading, evaporating, and forming again as rain. The pattern continues without hurry or complaint. It asks nothing, it simply is. Life too continues this way. When we surrender to its rhythm, complexity softens into grace. Simplicity does not mean stopping, it means moving without friction. It's the point where knowledge and peace overlap, where doing and being become the same act. Every lesson of nature leads here, to the still center that moves with everything around it. The circle of simplicity is not confinement, it's freedom through understanding. In this circle, science and serenity meet. To study the world is to see its cycles, the rotation of planets, the oscillation of atoms, the renewal of ecosystems. To live within it consciously is to feel those cycles in yourself: breath, pulse, rest, awakening. The outer rhythm and the inner rhythm mirror one another. When they align, the mind quiets, and the heart knows its place in the pattern. Now, as the story returns to silence, the circle closes gently. You've traveled through light and motion, through symmetry and sound, through rest and awareness, and all of it leads back here, to simplicity itself. Nothing more to add, nothing left to take away, only balance. The body knows what to do next. It has listened long enough to remember its rhythm, the slow breathing, the warmth spreading, the thoughts loosening like leaves on a quiet pond. Let the circle hold you. Let it finish the work you no longer need to manage. The world outside keeps turning. Stars continue their patient drift. The pulse of existence goes on unbroken. Within that infinite motion, there is peace, the kind that doesn't end when the story does, because it was always here. We, from Sleeping with Science, wish you a good night.